A struggling nurse risked everything to warn a young millionaire, seconds before he signed the deal to buy a hospital because she knew the truth. They were desperately hiding would destroy him. Before we start the story, tell us in the comments what city you are watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. She burst through those conference room doors like a woman possessed, her scrubs still stained from a double shift, her voice cracking as she screamed 3 words that would change everything. "Don't sign it!" The millionaire's pen hovered over the contract worth $40 million. The hospital executives' faces went white as sheets, and in that suffocating silence, she revealed a secret, so dark, so twisted, that it would send shock waves through the entire city and bring an empire of lies crashing down. But to understand why a nurse making $19 an hour would throw herself in front of a freight train of wealth and power, we have to go back to 3 weeks earlier, when she first discovered the truth they'd killed to keep buried. The fluorescent lights in the break room buzzed like trapped insects, casting that sickly yellow glow that made everyone look half dead. Appropriate, really, considering where they worked. Melissa Torres sat hunched over a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, her fingers wrapped around the styrofoam like it was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath her feet. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m. She'd been on her feet for 11 hours straight, and her lower back screamed with every breath. But that wasn't what kept her staring at nothing, her mind racing in circles that led nowhere good. It was the file. The file she'd seen 3 days ago when she'd stayed late to help organize the records room. The file that Dr. Raymond Whitmore, chief of surgery, pillar of the medical community, man who smiled in those glossy hospital brochures, like some kind of healing saint, had very specifically told her to put in the shredding pile, except she'd opened it first, and now she couldn't unsee what was inside. "You look like hell." "Mel!" She jerked her head up. Carol Jefferson stood in the doorway, another night shift nurse whose face had developed that permanent exhaustion that came from 20 years of saving lives while barely scraping by. Carol had 3 kids, an ex-husband who never paid child support, and the kind of bone-deep weariness that made her shoulders sag even when she smiled. "Rough night," Melissa managed, forcing something like a smile onto her face. Her lips felt stiff. Everything felt stiff lately, like her body was made of wood and wire instead of flesh and blood. Carol poured herself coffee from the pot that had been sitting on the burner since yesterday morning. The stuff probably tasted like battery acid at this point, but nobody in this hospital was here for the amenities. Mercy General Hospital. What a joke of a name, paid just enough to keep nurses from quitting en masse, but not enough to keep them from constantly wondering if there was something better out there. Spoiler alert, there usually wasn't. Not for people like them. "Did you hear?" Carol said, settling into the plastic chair across from her. The chair groaned under the weight, even though Carol was a small woman. Everything in this hospital was breaking down, held together with duct tape and prayers. "They're selling the place." Melissa's stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. "What?" "Yeah." Carol took a sip of the terrible coffee and didn't even flinch. "You developed an immunity to bad coffee after enough years in this profession. Board announced it this morning. Some young hotshot with too much money is buying the whole hospital. Private acquisition. They're saying he wants to modernize healthcare or some Silicon Valley nonsense. The file. The file. The file." The words pounded in Melissa's head like a drumbeat, like a warning bell, like the sound of her own heartbeat when she'd first read what they'd done. "When?" Her voice came out strangled. She cleared her throat, tried again. "When's the sale happening?" Carol shrugged, but there was something brittle in her expression, something that said she'd been in this profession long enough to know that when hospitals changed hands, staff got cut. People like them, the ones who'd given years to this place, got thanked for their service and shown the door. 3 weeks, maybe. There's supposed to be some big signing ceremony. Very fancy. Very corporate. She made a face. You know how it is. New owner comes in, makes promises about keeping everyone on staff, and 6 months later, we're all filing for unemployment. Melissa's hands shook. She pressed them flat against the table, willing them to still. They were selling the hospital. They were selling it to some unsuspecting buyer, who'd walk in thinking he was acquiring a functioning medical institution, not realizing he was actually purchasing a ticking time bomb. And when the truth came out, and it would, eventually, because these things always did, the new owner would be the one standing in the blast radius. They were setting him up. Dr. Whitmore, I feed and Fonendertien, CDD, Chief Administrator Linda Vance, maybe even the entire board they were selling this place, to shift the blame. To bury their sins under a mountain of paperwork and legal transfers so that when everything came to light, they could point their fingers at the new guy and say it happened on his watch. It was brilliant, in a sociopathic kind of way, and Melissa was the only person who knew about it. You okay? Carol was staring at her with concern now, her weathered face creasing with worry lines. You're white as a ghost. I'm fine, Melissa lied. The lie tasted like ashes in her mouth. Just tired. Aren't we all? Carol stood, joints popping like bubble wrap. She was only 43, but moved like a woman 20 years older. That's what this job did to you. It ground you down until there was nothing left but duty and exhaustion. Come on, Mrs. Kent in 407 is probably wondering where her pain meds are, and if I have to hear Dr. Morrison complain about slow response times one more time, I'm gonna lose it. Melissa followed her out of the break room on autopilot, her mind somewhere else entirely. 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks to figure out what to do. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of medication rounds, vital sign checks, and the endless documentation that somehow consumed half their time despite being completely useless. Melissa moved through her duties like a ghost, her hands competent even as her mind spun in desperate circles. She could go to the police. That was the obvious answer, wasn't it? Walk into a station, tell them everything, hand over whatever evidence she could get her hands on. Except she had no evidence. She'd seen the file, yes, but Dr. Whitmore had it now. Probably already destroyed it. And even if she went to the police, what would she say? That she'd seen something suspicious in a file she wasn't supposed to open? That she had a bad feeling about the hospital sale? They'd laugh her out of the building, or worse, they'd call the hospital. Verify her employment, ask some questions, and then she'd be fired. Blackballed from every hospital in the city. Good luck finding nursing work when your former employer tells everyone you're a troublemaker who makes baseless accusations. She had her 11-year-old daughter to think about, Vanessa, who was counting on her to keep a roof over their heads and food in the fridge, who had just started at a new school and was finally making friends after the disaster of last year, who deserved a mother who could provide, not a mother who threw away their stability for the sake of warning some rich guy who'd probably never believe her anyway. But God, the file. She'd seen the patient names, dates, procedure codes that didn't match the outcomes. And then, in Dr. Whitmore's own handwriting, the notes that made everything clear. Incident reports to be classified as individual errors. No pattern documentation. Board approval for confidential settlement. Patient families must sign NDAs before compensation release. They hadn't just made mistakes. They'd systematically covered them up. Multiple patients, multiple incidents, all buried under carefully crafted lies and legal pressure. And now they were selling the hospital to make it someone else's problem. By the time Melissa's shift ended at 7 a.m., the sun was already burning away the morning fog. She stood in the parking lot, her body aching in places she didn't know could ache, staring at her 10-year-old Honda that desperately needed new tires and probably had another 1,000 problems she couldn't afford to fix. She thought about Vanessa, who'd be waking up soon at her friend's house where she'd spent the night. Thought about the electricity bill that was 2 weeks overdue. Thought about the fact that her nursing salary barely covered their tiny one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where she couldn't let her daughter play outside, alone. And then she thought about the patients, whose names were in that file. Real people, families who'd trusted this hospital with their loved ones and gotten lies in return. She couldn't do this. She couldn't be the person who knew and said nothing. But she also couldn't be the person who threw everything away on what would probably be a futile gesture. The war in her head had been raging for 3 days now, and she wasn't any closer to an answer. Melissa drove home in silence, too tired even for the radio. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had probably been nice in the 1970s, but now just barely avoided being condemned. The carpet in the hallway had stains she didn't want to think about, and the elevator had been broken for 6 months. She climbed the stairs with legs that felt made of lead, unlocked her door, and immediately wanted to cry at the sight of her tiny living room. The couch she'd gotten at a thrift store, the TV that only got basic channels, the walls that desperately needed painting but would never get it because she didn't have the time or money. This was her life. This was what she'd built after nursing school, after the divorce, after climbing out of debt one painful dollar at a time, and she was about to risk all of it, because that's what she was going to do. Wasn't she? She'd already made the decision, really. She'd made it the moment she opened that file and saw what they'd done. The last 3 days had just been her trying to talk herself out of it, trying to convince herself that self-preservation was more important than doing what was right. But it wasn't. It couldn't be. Not when she looked at herself in the mirror. Not when she thought about what she'd tell Vanessa when her daughter was old enough to ask the hard questions about integrity and courage. Melissa collapsed onto her couch, her scrubs still on, smelling of antiseptic and exhaustion. She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and opened Google. It took her 15 minutes to find his name. Tyler Hayes, 32 years old. Made his first million at 26 with some kind of medical technology startup. Now worth approximately $43 million, according to the business journals. No scandals, no controversies. Just a young guy who'd gotten very rich very fast by being very smart. And, apparently, very interested in healthcare innovation. His photo showed a man with dark hair, sharp features, and the kind of confident smile that came from never having worried about money in your adult life. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her car. His eyes were intelligent, assessing the eyes of someone who thought he could see all the angles. He had no idea what was coming for him. In 3 weeks, Tyler Hayes was going to walk into Mercy General Hospital and sign papers that would make him the owner of a building full of secrets. And when those secrets exploded, and he'd be the one left standing in the ruins, unless someone warned him, unless someone risked everything to tell him the truth. Before it was too late, Melissa stared at his photo for a long time, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was a nurse. She made $19 an hour. She had a daughter who needed her, bills she could barely pay, and a life that was held together with string and stubborn determination. What she didn't have was a choice. Not really, because some things mattered more than survival. Some things mattered more than keeping your head down and your mouth shut. She just hoped to God that Tyler Hayes was the kind of man who'd listen. Because if he wasn't, she was about to destroy her entire life for nothing. The thought should have terrified her, and it did. But underneath the fear was something else, something that felt almost like relief. Because for the first time in 3 days, she wasn't just a passive observer watching a tragedy unfold. She was going to do something about it, even if it killed her. Melissa closed her eyes and tried to sleep, knowing it wouldn't come. Her mind was already racing ahead, trying to figure out how to reach a millionaire, how to make him believe her, how to blow up his deal without blowing up her own life in the process. It was impossible. She was going to do it anyway, because in the end, what choice did she have? Watch an innocent man walk into a trap and say nothing, let them get away with what they'd done, spend the rest of her life knowing she could have stopped it, and didn't? No, she'd been surviving for so long that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to actually fight for something. But she remembered now. God help her, she remembered. And Tyler Hayes was about to get the shock of his life. Tyler Hayes had always believed that due diligence was overrated. Not in the traditional sense he'd hired lawyers, accountants, and consultants who'd spent the last 6 months crawling through every document related to Mercy General Hospital. He had reports stacked on his desk analyzing everything from quarterly revenue to patient satisfaction scores. He knew the building's infrastructure down to the last pipe, the staff turnover rates, the equipment depreciation schedules. What he meant was the gut check kind of due diligence. The walking through corridors at midnight, talking to janitors, listening to what the night shift nurses whispered about in break rooms. That stuff felt too much like paranoia, like the kind of thinking that kept people stuck in analysis paralysis while opportunities slipped through their fingers. Tyler had built his fortune by moving fast and trusting his instincts, and his instincts said this hospital was exactly what he needed. "You're certain about this?" His lawyer, Richard Kent, sat across from him in the downtown office that served as Tyler's headquarters. Richard was 53, gray-haired, and cautious to the point of paralysis, which was exactly why Tyler kept him around. Someone needed to be the voice of reason when you were the kind of person who bet big and bet often. "I'm certain," Tyler said, not looking up from his laptop. He was reviewing the final contract for the 10th time, though he'd already memorized every clause. "This is the move, Richard. Healthcare's broken. Everyone knows it. But instead of complaining about it from the outside, I'm going to fix it from the inside. By buying a struggling hospital in a low-income neighborhood. By proving that the model works. You start with the places everyone else has given up on. You show that with the right technology and the right efficiency improvements, you can deliver quality care and actually make money doing it. Then you scale. 10 hospitals, 20, 50. Tyler finally looked up, and he knew his eyes had that gleam they got when he was talking about something he believed in. "This isn't just a business play, Richard. This is about changing the system." Richard sighed, the sound of a man who'd heard this speech before and knew better than to argue. "And the timeline? 3 weeks to closing seems aggressive. The board wants a fast sale. I want a fast purchase. Everyone wins. Except maybe the staff who will have to adapt to your changes." Tyler shrugged. He wasn't heartless. He knew that change was disruptive, that people would resist, that some of them would probably quit. But that was the price of progress. You couldn't make an omelet without breaking eggs, and you couldn't revolutionize healthcare without ruffling some feathers. Besides, in the long run, he'd be doing them a favor. Better equipment, better systems, better outcomes, that's what mattered. The staff would come around eventually. They always did. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Meeting with hospital board moved up to Thursday. They want to do the signing ceremony next week if possible, even faster than expected. Tyler felt that familiar rush of adrenaline, the sensation of momentum carrying him forward. This was happening. This was really happening, he typed back. Confirmed. Let's make it happen. Richard was watching him with that expression he got sometimes, the one that was equal parts concern and resignation. "Tyler, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer." "Shoot. Why this hospital? You could have bought any medical facility in the city. Better neighborhoods, better equipment, better reputations. Why Mercy General?" Tyler leaned back in his chair, considering the question. It was fair. Mercy General wasn't anyone's first choice for acquisition. The building was outdated, The neighborhood was rough, and the hospital's reputation was middling at best. On paper, it looked like a money pit, but that was exactly the point. "Because it's hard," he said finally. "Anyone can turn around a hospital that's already halfway decent. But if I can take Mercy General, a place that's been written off, that everyone expects to fail, and make it work, that proves the concept. That shows investors and policymakers and everyone else that this model works anywhere. Or it proves that some places are beyond saving." Tyler smiled, the kind of smile that had annoyed his teachers in school and his competitors in business. "You don't know me very well if you think I believe anything is beyond saving." Richard gathered his papers, shaking his head. "Just promise me you'll read through the final contract one more time before you sign. I made a few small changes to the liability clauses." "Will do." "I mean it, Tyler. Don't just skim it. Read every word." "Richard, I'm not going to every word." Richard stood, giving him the kind of look that probably worked on his teenage kids, but had limited effect on Tyler. "I'll see you Thursday for the final walkthrough." After Richard left, Tyler did read through the contract again. Sort of. He skimmed the parts he'd already reviewed and focused on Richard's changes, which were minimal and mostly dealt with insurance provisions. Everything looked fine. Everything always looked fine when you had good lawyers. He should have felt nervous. This was the biggest acquisition of his career, the move that would either cement his reputation as a visionary or prove he was just another rich kid playing at business. $40 million, most of his liquid assets, plus a substantial line of credit. But he didn't feel nervous. He felt electric. This was going to work. He could feel it in his bones. That certainty that came maybe 3 or 4 times in a lifetime if you were lucky. The same certainty he'd felt when he'd started his first company in his garage, working 18-hour days while everyone told him he was crazy. Look how that had turned out. Tyler closed his laptop and looked out the window at the city spreading below him. Somewhere out there, Mercy General Hospital was running its night shift, treating patients, saving lives, slowly crumbling under the weight of inefficiency and neglect. In 3 weeks, it would be his, and 6 months after that, it would be unrecognizable. A model for the future, proof that healthcare could be fixed by people with vision and the courage to act. He just had to sign the papers. Melissa hadn't slept. She'd tried. God knows she'd tried. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the file. The patient names, the dates, the careful documentation of a cover-up that would destroy lives if it ever came to light. At noon, she gave up on sleep entirely and went to pick up Vanessa from her friend's house. Her daughter bounced into the car with the kind of energy that only 11-year-old girls seem to possess, talking a mile a minute about the movie they'd watched and the pancakes they'd made, and how Emma's mom said she could sleep over again next weekend if it was okay. "Sounds fun, baby," Melissa said, trying to inject some enthusiasm into her voice. She must have failed, because Vanessa stopped mid-sentence and peered at her with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You okay, Mom?" "Just tired. Long shift." "You're always tired after long shifts." "This is different tired." Vanessa buckled her seatbelt, still watching her. When had her daughter gotten so perceptive? When had she stopped being a little kid who believed everything was fine as long as Mom said so? Melissa pulled out of the driveway, focusing on the road because she couldn't handle looking at her daughter right now. "I'm fine, honey. Promise." They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Vanessa said, quiet and serious in a way that made Melissa's throat tight, "Is it money stuff?" "What?" "No." Melissa glanced over, saw the worry on her daughter's face, and felt something crack inside her chest. "No, baby. We're okay on money. I'm just working through something at the hospital. Adult stuff, nothing for you to worry about." "But you're worried." "Yeah," Melissa admitted, because what was the point in lying? Vanessa could read her like a book. "Yeah, I'm worried. But I'll figure it out." "You always do," Vanessa said, with the kind of absolute faith that made Melissa want to cry. Because what if this time she didn't? What if this time she made the wrong call and it all came crashing down? They stopped at the grocery store, $63 for a week's worth of food, carefully selected to stretch as far as possible and then home to their tiny apartment. Vanessa disappeared into her room to do homework, and Melissa stood in the kitchen, staring at her phone. She'd spent the last hour of her shift researching Tyler Hayes. His company had a website with a contact form. He had a business email that was probably screened by 3 different assistants. He had social media accounts that he rarely updated personally. In other words, she had no way to reach him, or did she? Melissa's fingers moved before her brain fully caught up, typing into Google, Tyler Hayes' office address. It took some digging, but she found it. A downtown building, 19th floor. The kind of place where security probably didn't let random people wander up unannounced. But maybe she didn't need to go unannounced. Maybe she could call, make an appointment, pretend to be a consultant or a concerned citizen or literally anything other than a terrified nurse who was about to ruin her life. Except she couldn't call. What would she even say? Hi, I'd like to schedule a meeting to tell your boss that the hospital he's buying is actually a criminal enterprise? That would go over well. She needed to do this in person, face to face, so he could see that she was serious, that she wasn't crazy, that what she was telling him mattered, which meant she needed to get into his office, which meant she needed a plan that was slightly more sophisticated than just showing up and hoping for the best. Melissa spent the rest of the afternoon researching, her laptop balanced on her knees while Vanessa did homework at the kitchen table. She learned that Tyler Hayes arrived at his office between 8 and 9 a.m. most days, that he had a small staff, an assistant, a few consultants, his lawyer, that he was scheduled to do a final walkthrough of Mercy General in 2 days, Thursday afternoon, before the signing ceremony the following week. 2 days. She had 2 days to figure out how to intercept him, convince him to listen, and blow up a $40 million deal. No pressure. Mom? Vanessa was standing next to her, and Melissa nearly jumped out of her skin. You've been staring at your computer for like an hour. What are you looking at? Just work stuff. Melissa closed the laptop too quickly, and Vanessa's eyes narrowed. You're being weird. I'm being tired. You're being weird tired. Vanessa crossed her arms, looking so much older than 11 that it hurt. Are you in trouble? No, but... Melissa hesitated, then made a decision. She'd been lying to Vanessa all afternoon, and she was tired of it. Besides, her daughter deserved to know that sometimes doing the right thing meant risking everything. But I might be soon. I found out about something bad at work. Something really bad. And I have to decide if I'm going to report it. Vanessa's expression shifted from suspicious to worried. What kind of bad? The kind where people could get hurt if I don't say something, but also the kind where I could lose my job if I do. Her daughter processed this with the seriousness it deserved. Then she said, What would happen if you lost your job? Melissa felt her chest constrict. We'd have to be really careful with money for a while. I'd find another job eventually, but it might take time. We might have to move somewhere cheaper. You might have to switch schools again. She watched all of that land on Vanessa's shoulders, watched her daughter understand exactly what was at stake. And then she watched something shift in Vanessa's face, something that looked like resolution. But people would get hurt if you don't report it? Yeah, they would. Then you have to report it, Vanessa said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Like the decision was obvious, right? Melissa's eyes burned. It's not that simple, baby. Why not? You always tell me to do the right thing even when it's hard. Isn't this the same? Out of the mouths of babes. Melissa pulled her daughter into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling the weight of this small body that depended on her for everything. Yeah, she whispered. Yeah, it's the same. So you're going to do it? Yeah, I'm going to do it. She felt Vanessa nod against her shoulder. Okay, we'll figure out the rest. God, when had her daughter gotten so brave? That night, after Vanessa went to bed, Melissa made her plan. It was risky. It was probably stupid. It would almost certainly fail. But it was all she had. She'd go to Tyler Hayes's office Thursday morning, the day of his final walkthrough. She'd find a way past security claim to be a courier, a consultant, whatever worked. And she'd get 5 minutes with him. That's all she needed. 5 minutes to tell him about the file, about the cover-up, about the trap he was walking into. If he believed her, maybe he'd call off the deal. Launch an investigation. Bring in the authorities. If he didn't believe her, she'd go to the police herself. Blow the whistle publicly. Accept whatever consequences came with that. Either way, she wasn't going to be silent anymore. She thought about texting Carol, telling someone what she was about to do. But that would just implicate her friend in whatever fallout came. Better to do this alone. Melissa lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the building settling around her. Pipes groaning, neighbors arguing through thin walls, the distant wail of sirens that was just part of the soundtrack in this neighborhood. This might be the last night she spent in this apartment as a person with a steady job and a stable life. Tomorrow, she'd go to work like normal, keep her head down, pretend everything was fine. And Thursday morning, she'd walk into Tyler Hayes's office and detonate a bomb that would either save him or destroy them both. She should have been terrified. She was. But underneath the terror was something else, something that felt like purpose. She'd spent so long just surviving, just getting through each day, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to actually fight for something. It felt good. It felt right. It felt absolutely terrifying. Thursday morning couldn't come fast enough, and at the same time, she desperately wished it would never arrive, because once she did this, there was no going back. Her life would split into before and after, the person she was now and the person she'd become after she walked through those doors and spoke the truth that no one wanted to hear. Melissa closed her eyes and tried to sleep, knowing it wouldn't come. In 2 days, everything would change. She just hoped she'd survive it. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of gray drizzle that made everything look washed out and miserable. Melissa stood in front of her bathroom mirror, hands braced against the sink, staring at a woman she barely recognized. Dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Hair pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days. The same scrubs she wore every shift, blue and utilitarian, and marked with the Mercy General logo that now made her stomach turn. Except she wasn't wearing scrubs today. She'd pulled out the only professional outfit she owned, black slacks, that were slightly too big after she'd lost weight from stress, a white button-down blouse that she usually reserved for parent-teacher conferences, and a blazer she'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. The blazer had a small stain on the sleeve that she'd tried to scrub out without success. But if she kept her arm at the right angle, maybe no one would notice. She looked like a woman playing dress-up, like someone pretending to be the kind of person who belonged in a downtown office building, talking to millionaires. "You look nice." "Mom!" Melissa jumped, turning to find Vanessa in the doorway, already dressed for school in jeans and the purple hoodie that was currently her favorite piece of clothing. Her daughter studied her with those 2 observant eyes, taking in the outfit, the tension in Melissa's shoulders, the barely controlled panic that must have been written all over her face. "Thanks, baby." Melissa tried to smile. It felt like her face might crack. "Today's the day? Today's the day." Vanessa nodded slowly, then crossed the small space between them and wrapped her arms around Melissa's waist. She was getting taller. When had that happened? Soon she'd be as tall as Melissa. The thought made something ache in her chest. "You're doing the right thing," Vanessa whispered against her shoulder. "Even if it's scary." "Yeah." Melissa's voice came out rough. She cleared her throat. "Yeah, I am." They stood like that for a long moment, mother and daughter, holding on to each other before the world shifted. Then Vanessa pulled back, squared her shoulders like she was preparing for battle, and said, "Come on, I'll miss the bus if we don't leave soon." The morning routine was achingly normal. Toast and orange juice, backpack checks, the walk down 3 flights of stairs to the street where the school bus would arrive in exactly 4 minutes because Vanessa had the schedule memorized. Other kids gathered at the corner, their breath making small clouds in the cold air. The bus pulled up, brakes hissing. Vanessa climbed the steps, then turned back, giving Melissa one last look that said everything words couldn't. "Be brave. Come home safe. I believe in you." Then she was gone, swallowed by the yellow bus that pulled away from the curb and disappeared around the corner. Melissa stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, watching nothing, trying to memorize this feeling, this version of her life, because in a few hours, everything might be different. Then she walked to her car, hands shaking so badly she could barely get the key in the ignition. Tyler's office was in one of those glass and steel towers that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. All sharp angles and reflective surfaces, the kind of building designed to intimidate and impress in equal measure. Melissa parked in a public garage 3 blocks away, $12 for 2 hours, which felt like an obscene amount of money, and walked through the drizzle with her head down, trying to look purposeful, like she belonged here, like she wasn't a nurse who made $19 an hour, about to crash into a world that existed on a completely different plane. The lobby was all marble and modern art, the kind of space where every footstep echoed. A security desk sat near the elevators, manned by 2 guards who looked bored and alert at the same time. Behind them, a bank of turnstiles that required key cards to pass through. Melissa's plan, such as it was, died right there. She couldn't just walk up and ask to see Tyler Hayes. They'd ask if she had an appointment. She'd say no. They'd politely tell her to call his office and set one up. End of story. She stood near the entrance, partially hidden behind a pillar, watching people stream in and out. Business types in expensive suits, carrying leather briefcases and talking on phones that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Everyone moved with confidence, with belonging, with the certainty that came from knowing you were supposed to be here. Melissa had never felt more out of place in her life. This was stupid. This was so stupid. What was I thinking? She should leave, go to the police directly, or just go home, forget this whole thing, let Tyler Hayes sign his papers and deal with the consequences himself. It wasn't her problem. She'd tried. That was enough, wasn't it? Except it wasn't. She knew it wasn't. "Excuse me, miss? Can I help you with something?" Melissa's head snapped up. One of the security guards had left his post and was walking toward her, his expression polite but suspicious. She must have been standing there too long, looking too uncertain, setting off whatever internal alarms security guards developed after years of watching for threats. I'm here to see someone." The words came out too fast, too nervous. "In Tyler Hayes' office, 19th floor. Do you have an appointment?" "Not exactly, but it's urgent. It's about the hospital Mercy General. I work there, and I have information he needs to hear before he signs the acquisition papers." The guard's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. The look that said he'd heard every excuse in the book. And this one wasn't even creative. "You'll need to contact his office directly to set up a meeting." "I can't let you up without an appointment." "Please." Melissa hated the desperation in her voice, but she couldn't control it anymore. "Please, just call up there. Tell them a nurse from Mercy General is here with urgent information about the acquisition. 5 minutes. That's all I need." "Ma'am, I can't. People are going to get hurt." The words burst out of her, loud enough that several people in the lobby turned to look. Melissa felt her face flush, but pressed on anyway. "He's about to buy a hospital that's hiding something terrible, and if he signs those papers, it's going to destroy him. I'm not some crazy person. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm trying to help. The guard studied her for a long moment, his professional mask slipping just enough for her to see the person underneath. Someone with a job to do. Someone who'd probably been in situations where the crazy-sounding person turned out to be actually crazy. But also someone who, maybe, had a shred of empathy for the terrified woman in the thrift store blazer. "Wait here," he said finally, then turned and walked back to the security desk. Melissa watched him pick up a phone, speak into it quietly. The seconds stretched out like years. Other people continued to flow through the lobby, none of them paying her any attention now, all of them absorbed in their own important business. The guard hung up, said something to his partner, then walked back to her. "Mr. Hayes's assistant says he's not available. If you'd like to leave your contact information, no." Melissa surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. "No, I need to see him today. His final walkthrough at the hospital is this afternoon. The signing ceremony is in a few days. If I don't talk to him now, it'll be too late." "Ma'am, I understand you're concerned, but without an appointment, I can't let you upstairs. Those are the rules." Rules. Of course there were rules. There were always rules, designed to keep people like her away from people like Tyler Hayes, designed to maintain the barriers between worlds that weren't supposed to touch. Melissa felt something inside her break. Not in a bad way, more like the snapping of a leash she hadn't realized was holding her back. She'd come this far. She'd risked this much. She wasn't going to give up because of rules. "Then I'll wait," she said. "Here, in the lobby. However long it takes. He has to leave eventually, right? For his walkthrough. And when he does, I'll talk to him then." The guard's expression said this was not going to fly. "Ma'am, you can't just camp out in the lobby." "Why not?" "I'm not blocking anything. I'm not causing a disturbance. I'm just sitting." She walked over to one of the modern benches near the windows and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "I'll be quiet. You won't even know I'm here." "Ma'am, are you going to forcibly remove me? Because I'm not leaving. Not until I talk to Tyler Hayes." The guard looked at her for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if she was worth the hassle. Melissa stared back, channeling every ounce of stubborn determination she'd developed over years of being a single mother in a world that wanted her to give up. Finally, he sighed. "If you're still here in an hour, I'm calling the police." "Fair enough." He walked away, shaking his head. Melissa sat on the bench, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat, and tried to look calm. An hour. She had an hour, and then what? Get arrested for trespassing? Escorted out by police while everyone in the lobby watched? Probably lose her job anyway. When word got back to the hospital about the crazy nurse who stalked Tyler Hayes in his office building? What am I doing? What the hell am I doing? But she stayed sitting, because what else could she do? She'd already burned her boats. There was no going back now. 45 minutes crawled by. Melissa watched the elevator bank, tracking every person who emerged, hoping one of them would be Tyler Hayes. She'd memorized his face from the photos online, dark hair, sharp features, that confident smile. She'd know him if she saw him, except what if he'd already left? What if he'd gone out a different exit? What if she was sitting here waiting for someone who wasn't even in the building? The security guard kept glancing at her, clearly hoping she'd give up and leave. His partner looked amused by the whole situation, like this was the most interesting thing that had happened all week. 55 minutes. Melissa's hands were shaking again. She clasped them together, squeezing until her knuckles went white. "Please, please! If there's any such thing as fate or luck or divine intervention, please let this work." 58 minutes. The elevator chimed. Doors opened. 3 people stepped out, 2 women in business suits, and a man, Tyler Hayes. He was taller than she'd expected, and the photos hadn't quite captured the energy that radiated off him. He moved like someone who'd never doubted himself, never hesitated, never wondered if he belonged somewhere. The two women flanked him, one on each side, both talking at once while he nodded and typed something on his phone. Melissa stood up so fast she nearly tripped over her own feet. They were walking toward the exit. Toward her, she had seconds to decide. Flag him down here in front of security and witnesses, or follow him outside, risk looking like a stalker. Her body made the decision before her brain caught up. She started walking, angling to intercept them before they reached the doors. "Mr. Hayes!" All three of them stopped. Tyler looked up from his phone, his expression shifting from distracted to politely curious. His eyes found her this nervous woman in a cheap blazer with a stain on the sleeve, and she saw him trying to place her. "Consultant? Potential employee? Random person? Mr. Hayes, I need to talk to you. Please. It's about Mercy General." One of the women, his assistant, probably stepped slightly in front of him, her expression professional but protective. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but—" "Then you'll need to contact our office. Mr. Hayes is on his way to an important meeting." "I know. The walkthrough. That's why I'm here." Melissa heard her voice rising, heard the desperation bleeding through and couldn't stop it. "Please, 5 minutes. That's all I need. Before you go to the hospital, before you sign anything, you need to hear what I have to say." Tyler was studying her now, with more interest, his head tilted slightly. "You work at Mercy General?" "Yes, I'm a nurse there, and I know things about that hospital. Things they didn't tell you. Things that should make you walk away from this deal." The assistant moved to intercept again, but Tyler held up a hand, stopping her. His eyes stayed on Melissa, assessing. "What kind of things?" This was it. Her one shot. "The kind of things they're trying to bury by selling to you," Melissa said, the words tumbling out fast before she lost her nerve. "The kind of things that will destroy your reputation and possibly land you in legal trouble if you become the owner. They're setting you up, Mr. Hayes, and I can prove it." Silence. The lobby had gone quiet, or maybe that was just in Melissa's head. Everything felt frozen, suspended, like the universe was holding its breath. Tyler Hayes looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at his watch, then back at her. "You've got 5 minutes," he said, "but we talk in the car." "I'm not missing this walkthrough." The assistant started to protest, but Tyler was already moving toward the exit, gesturing for Melissa to follow. She did, her legs somehow still working, despite feeling like they might give out at any second. She'd done it. She'd gotten his attention. Now she just had to convince him that everything he thought he knew about Mercy General Hospital was a lie, and she had exactly the length of a car ride to do it. No pressure. The car was a sleek black sedan with leather seats that probably cost more than Melissa's entire living room furniture set. She slid into the back beside Tyler Hayes, acutely aware of how out of place she was. His assistant, a woman named Rachel, she'd learned in the 30 seconds between the lobby and the car, sat in the front passenger seat, twisted around to watch Melissa like she might pull out a weapon at any moment. The driver pulled away from the curb, and suddenly they were moving through downtown traffic, the clock ticking on Melissa's 5 minutes. Tyler had his phone out, still typing something, but his attention was clearly on her. Multitasking, probably. The kind of person who could hold 3 conversations and make 2 business decisions simultaneously without breaking a sweat. "So," he said, finally looking up and giving her his full attention, "you have 5 minutes to tell me why I shouldn't buy a hospital I've spent 6 months vetting. Go." Melissa's mouth went dry. She'd practiced this. Lying in bed at 3 in the morning, she'd rehearsed exactly what she'd say, how she'd lay out the facts calmly and logically, building an airtight case that he couldn't dismiss. But now, sitting in this expensive car with this intimidatingly confident man staring at her, all those carefully rehearsed words evaporated. "They're covering up medical mistakes," she said, the words coming out too fast, too blunt. "Multiple patients, multiple incidents. Dr. Raymond Whitmore and Chief Administrator Linda Vance, probably others on the board. They've been classifying serious errors as isolated incidents, paying families to sign NDAs, burying the documentation, and now they're selling the hospital to you so that when the truth comes out, you're the one holding the bag. Tyler's expression didn't change. He just watched her, steady and analytical, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. That's a serious accusation. I know. Do you have proof? I saw a file. Dr. Whitmore's personal records. Patient names, dates, incident reports that never made it into the official system. Notes about settling with families quietly. It was all there. And where is this file now? Melissa's stomach sank. I don't know. He had me help organize records 3 days ago. Told me to put some files in the shredding pile. I opened one before I shredded it and saw what was inside. When I realized what I was reading, I didn't shred it. I hid it in a different filing cabinet. But when I went back the next day to get it, it was gone. She watched Tyler process this, saw the skepticism creeping into his expression. Rachel had fully turned around now, her face a mask of professional disapproval. So you saw something you weren't supposed to see, in a file you were supposed to destroy. But now that file has disappeared, and you have no physical evidence of anything you're claiming. Rachel's voice was polite but cutting. Mr. Hayes, we really need to get to this walkthrough. Wait. Melissa leaned forward, desperation making her voice sharp. I know how this sounds. I know I look like some conspiracy theorist who wandered in off the street. But I'm telling you the truth. I remember the names, the dates. I can give you details. Details about confidential patient records. Tyler's eyebrow arched. Which you accessed without authorization. I was organizing them. Dr. Whitmore gave me the job himself. And did he give you permission to read through confidential files? Melissa felt the trap closing around her. No, but so you violated patient privacy. And now you're making serious accusations about a respected surgeon and hospital administrator based on documents you admit you stole and can no longer produce. Tyler's voice wasn't harsh exactly, just factual, laying out the problems with her story in a way that made it sound ridiculous even to her own ears. I didn't steal anything. I saw something wrong and I'm trying to report it. To me, not to the medical board, not to the police, not to any official body that handles these kinds of complaints. You came straight to the person about to buy the hospital? Because you're the one walking into a trap. Melissa heard her voice rising and tried to control it. Failed. They're selling because they know this is going to blow up. They need someone to take the fall, and you're it. 6 months from now, a year from now, someone's going to connect the dots. Maybe a journalist, maybe a family member of one of the victims. And when they do, the hospital owner is going to be the one facing lawsuits and criminal charges. Or, Tyler said calmly, you're a disgruntled employee trying to sabotage a sale that you think will threaten your job security. The words hit like a slap. I'm not, it's a common concern. New ownership, restructuring, staff cuts. People get nervous. They imagine conspiracies. I'm not imagining anything. Melissa's hands were shaking again. She pressed them against her knees, trying to steady herself. Look, I know how this sounds. I know I have no proof. But I'm risking everything by being here. Do you understand that? I could lose my job for this. I probably will lose my job. I'm a single mother with an 11-year-old daughter and bills I can barely pay. And I'm here anyway because what they did is wrong, and what they're doing to you is wrong. Tyler studied her for a long moment. The car slowed, stopped at a red light. Outside the window, the city moved on, oblivious to the conversation happening inside this expensive metal box. What's your name? Tyler asked finally. Melissa. Melissa Torres. Melissa Torres. He said it slowly, like he was filing it away. How long have you worked at Mercy General? 4 years. And in those 4 years, have you ever filed any complaints? Any concerns about patient care or administrative misconduct? No, because there wasn't anything to complain about. Or if there was, I didn't know about it. I'm a floor nurse, Mr. Hayes. I take care of patients. I don't have access to the kind of information that would show me patterns of misconduct. Not until Dr. Whitmore handed me that file. Why would he do that? If he was trying to cover something up, why would he let a nurse anywhere near those records? I don't think he expected me to read them. He probably assumed I'd just do what I was told and shred everything without looking. Melissa's voice cracked slightly. And honestly, I almost did. I almost just followed orders and destroyed evidence of God knows how many incidents. The only reason I didn't is because I opened the wrong file first and saw something that made me curious enough to open the others. The light turned green. The car started moving again. Melissa could see Mercy General Hospital in the distance now, the familiar brick building that had been her workplace for 4 years. From here it looked normal, innocuous. Just another urban hospital serving a low-income neighborhood. You couldn't see the rot from the outside. Rachel was checking her phone, clearly done with this conversation. Mr. Hayes, we're 3 minutes out. Your walkthrough is scheduled to start at 10, and Dr. Whitmore himself is giving you the tour. Perfect, Tyler said, but he was still looking at Melissa. Tell me something. If what you're saying is true, why come to me? Why not go straight to the police? Because I don't have evidence. You think the police are going to launch an investigation based on my word alone? They'll call the hospital, verify my employment, ask if I've ever shown signs of instability or filed baseless complaints. And then Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance will very calmly explain that I'm a troubled employee, possibly mentally unstable, making wild accusations. Case closed. But you think I'll believe you? I think you're about to spend $40 million on something that could ruin your life. I think that's worth at least asking questions, looking a little deeper, maybe holding off on signing until you're absolutely sure you know what you're buying. The car pulled up in front of Mercy General Hospital. Through the window, Melissa could see Dr. Whitmore standing near the entrance, flanked by Linda Vance and 2 other board members. All of them dressed professionally, smiling, ready to give Tyler Hayes the grand tour of the hospital they were about to unload on him. Dr. Whitmore's eyes found the car, found Tyler visible through the window. His smile widened. Then his gaze shifted slightly, and he saw Melissa. The smile didn't falter, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, confusion, and then, just for a fraction of a second, something that looked like fear. Tyler saw it too. Melissa watched him track the change in Dr. Whitmore's expression, saw the gears turning in his head. Rachel, Tyler said quietly, not taking his eyes off the hospital entrance. Call Richard. Tell him I want a full background check on everyone on Mercy General's board of directors. Not the standard vetting we already did. I want deep background, financial records, any sealed lawsuits, any complaints filed with medical boards that didn't result in disciplinary action. Everything. Rachel blinked. Mr. Hayes, do it now, please. She pulled out her phone, moving to the far side of the car to make the call. Tyler finally looked back at Melissa. I'm not saying I believe you, but I'm not saying I don't believe you either. That file you saw, can you describe it in detail? Everything you remember? Melissa's heart hammered. This was her chance, maybe her only chance. It was a red folder. Legal size, not letter. The tab said, Confidential Review, in Dr. Whitmore's handwriting. She closed her eyes, pulling up the memory of those pages she'd stared at in horror. The first patient was a woman named Gloria Martinez, admitted for routine gallbladder surgery last April. Post-op complications resulted in septic shock. She died 3 days after the procedure. The official incident report classified it as an unavoidable complication. But Dr. Whitmore's notes said the surgical team used contaminated instruments and that they knew about the sterilization equipment malfunction, but didn't halt procedures because they were already behind schedule. Tyler's expression had gone very still. Go on. There was a man named Thomas Brennan. He came in with chest pain in June. The ER doctor ordered tests but got pulled away before reading the results. Someone dropped the ball. Mr. Brennan went home. He died of a massive heart attack that night. The hospital paid his family $80,000 to sign an NDA and not pursue a malpractice claim. How many cases were in this file? 7 that I saw clearly, but there were more pages. I didn't get through all of them before I heard someone coming. Melissa opened her eyes, met Tyler's gaze directly, and every single one of them had notes about settlement amounts, NDA agreements, and instructions to keep the cases out of the state incident reporting system. This wasn't just negligence, Mr. Hayes. This was systematic cover-up of negligence. Rachel had finished her call and was listening now, her skeptical expression replaced with something more serious. Outside, Dr. Whitmore was checking his watch, his welcoming smile starting to look strained. Tyler pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. Then he looked at Melissa one more time. I need you to write down everything you remember. Patient names, dates, every detail. Can you do that? Yes. Good. Rachel will take you to a coffee shop and get you set up with a laptop. I want a complete account. He glanced at his assistant. And call Detective Morgan at the precinct, the one who handled that corporate fraud case last year. Tell him I might have something that requires his attention, but I need to verify some information first. You're going to investigate? Melissa could barely believe what she was hearing. I'm going to ask questions. That's all I'm promising right now. Tyler's expression was unreadable. But if what you're telling me is true, then yes. I'll investigate, and I won't sign anything until I have answers. Relief crashed over Melissa so hard she felt dizzy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. If this turns out to be false, if you're wasting my time with paranoid fantasies, or trying to manipulate me for some reason I haven't figured out yet, you'll wish you'd never walked into my office building. There was no heat in his voice, just cool certainty. Tyler Hayes wasn't a man who made idle threats. It's not false, Melissa said firmly. Every word I told you is true. Then we'll find out together. He opened his car door, stepping out into the drizzle. Through the window, Melissa saw him transform the hint of doubt and suspicion melting away, replaced by the confident smile of a man excited about a business opportunity. He strode toward Dr. Whitmore with his hand extended, every inch the eager buyer. Dr. Whitmore's smile returned, relief visible in the set of his shoulders. He thought the threat had passed, thought whatever that nurse had been doing in Tyler Hayes' car, it hadn't worked. He was wrong. Rachel turned to Melissa. Come on, there's a place 2 blocks from here where we can work. And Ms. Torres? You better hope your memory is as good as you think it is. Melissa nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She'd done it. She'd warned him. Tyler Hayes was going to investigate instead of blindly signing. Now she just had to hope that her memory of that file was detailed enough, accurate enough, credible enough to prove she wasn't crazy, and she had to hope that Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. Because if they found out she'd talked, if they figured out she was the leak before the investigation could protect her, Melissa pushed the thought away. She'd come this far. There was no turning back now. She climbed out of the car and followed Rachel down the sidewalk, not looking back at the hospital where she'd worked for 4 years, the hospital where, if everything went according to plan, she'd never work again. But some things were worth losing a job over. Some things were worth risking everything. She just hoped her daughter would forgive her if this all went wrong. Tyler Hayes had given thousands of hours of his life to perfecting the art of the poker face. Building a company required it never let investors see your doubt, never let competitors smell your fear, never let anyone know what you're really thinking until the moment you're ready to act. So, as he walked through Mercy General Hospital with Dr. Whitmore droning on about occupancy rates and equipment upgrades, his smile never wavered. He nodded at the right moments, asked intelligent questions, appeared to be exactly what they expected. A young entrepreneur eager to make his mark in healthcare, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Gloria Martinez, Thomas Brennan, The names played on repeat in his head. Real people, real deaths. If Melissa Torres was telling the truth, and God help him, his gut said she was. As you can see, Dr. Whitmore was saying, leading him through a corridor that smelled of industrial cleaner and something underneath it that might have been decay. The infrastructure needs updating, but that's reflected in the price. With the right investment, this facility could be state-of-the-art. Absolutely, Tyler said, his tone enthusiastic. I'm seeing tremendous potential here. Linda Vance, walking on his other side, beamed. We're so pleased to have found a buyer who shares our vision for Mercy General's future. This hospital has served the community for 43 years. It deserves an owner who cares about more than just profit margins. The irony wasn't lost on Tyler. They were selling because they cared so much about the hospital's legacy? Sure, nothing to do with burying mistakes and shifting liability. If tiu fe tiu, Melissa was right. He had to keep reminding himself of that qualifier. She could be wrong, confused, mentally unstable, deliberately lying for reasons he hadn't figured out yet. But that look on Dr. Whitmore's face, when he'd seen her in the car, that momentary flash of fear, that was real. Something was wrong here. Tyler had built his fortune on trusting his instincts, and right now every instinct he had was screaming that Melissa Torres had just saved him from making a catastrophic mistake. He just had to prove it before his signing ceremony in 4 days. Shall we see the surgical suites? Dr. Whitmore asked, already moving toward the elevators. I think you'll be impressed with our recent upgrades to the sterilization protocols. Sterilization protocols. Tyler thought about Gloria Martinez. Contaminated instruments. A woman who died because they couldn't be bothered to halt procedures for equipment malfunction. His smile never faltered. Lead the way, he said. I want to see everything. The coffee shop was one of those aggressively modern places with exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling, and a chalkboard menu written in elaborate cursive that took genuine effort to decipher. The kind of place where coffee cost $7 and came with foam art that seemed too pretty to drink. Melissa sat at a corner table with a laptop Rachel had produced from seemingly nowhere, her fingers hovering over the keys, trying to remember details that could make or break everything. Rachel sat across from her, scrolling through her own phone, but clearly monitoring Melissa's every move, watching for signs of deception, or maybe just signs of sanity. Start with the first case you saw, Rachel said without looking up. Name, date, what happened, what the cover-up involved. Be as specific as possible. Melissa took a breath and started typing. Case 1. Gloria Martinez. Admitted April 14, 2024. For laparoscopic cholecystectomy, gallbladder removal. Surgeon, Dr. Raymond Whitmore. Surgery completed without apparent complications. Patient developed fever and severe abdominal pain approximately 18 hours post-op. The words came easier than she'd expected. Maybe because she'd been replaying them in her head for 3 days straight, unable to think about anything else. Maybe because some things, once seen, couldn't be unseen. She wrote about Thomas Brennan, the man who'd been sent home from the ER with unread test results. About Patricia Kent, who'd been given the wrong dosage of blood thinner and suffered a massive stroke as a result. About Marcus Foster, whose post-surgical infection had been noticed by a nurse, but dismissed by the attending physician until Mr. Foster went into septic shock and died. 7 cases. 7 people who'd trusted Mercy General Hospital with their lives and gotten negligence in return. 7 families who'd been paid to stay quiet while the hospital buried the evidence and continued operating like nothing had happened. Melissa's hands shook as she typed. She'd been a nurse for 8 years, 4 at Mercy General, 4 at another hospital across town before that. She'd seen patients die. It was part of the job. The terrible truth that nobody talked about in nursing school, but everyone learned soon enough. You couldn't save everyone. Sometimes people died despite everyone's best efforts, and you had to find a way to live with that. But these weren't those kinds of deaths. These were preventable. These were the result of shortcuts and negligence and a system that cared more about protecting itself than protecting patients. And Melissa had been working there for 4 years, completely oblivious. How many times had she passed Dr. Whitmore in the hallway, nodding respectfully at the chief of surgery? How many times had she attended staff meetings where Linda Vance talked about patient care excellence and quality outcomes? How many times had she been part of a system that was rotting from the inside? "You okay?" Melissa looked up to find Rachel watching her with something that might have been concern. "Yeah, it's a lot. Take your time, but be thorough. If Mr. Hayes is going to pull the emergency brake on a $40 million deal, he needs ironclad reasons." Right. Because this wasn't just about doing the right thing. It was about convincing a skeptical millionaire that walking away from months of work and planning was the smart business decision. Melissa kept typing. An hour passed, then another. Rachel ordered them both sandwiches. At some point, Melissa couldn't remember eating hers, but the wrapper was empty. The laptop screen blurred and refocused as exhaustion crept in around the edges of her consciousness. She'd been awake for almost 30 hours straight now. The previous night shift, the sleepless anxiety afterward, the morning's confrontation, it was all catching up with her. But she kept typing. Finally, she pushed the laptop across the table to Rachel. "That's everything I can remember. Every detail that stuck." Rachel read through it in silence, her expression unreadable. Melissa watched her scroll, wondering what she saw. A credible whistleblower? A delusional employee? Something in between? "These settlement amounts," Rachel said finally. "You're sure about these numbers?" "As sure as I can be. I saw them written clearly in Dr. Whitmore's notes." "Why?" "Because they're oddly specific, not round numbers. The Martinez family got $127,000. The Brennan family got $83,500. These read like actual settlement figures, not made-up amounts." "I'm not making this up." Melissa heard the edge in her voice and tried to soften it. "I know you have no reason to believe me. I'm just some nurse who cornered your boss in a parking garage. But I'm telling the truth." Rachel looked at her for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. "It's me. I'm reading through what she wrote. It's detailed, very detailed." A pause. "No, I don't think she's making it up. The question is whether she's misinterpreting what she saw, or if it's actually as bad as she thinks." Another pause, longer this time. "Okay, yes, I'll bring her there now." She hung up and stood. "Come on, Mr. Hayes wants to see you." "Where is he?" "At his office. The walkthrough ended an hour ago." Melissa followed Rachel out of the coffee shop, her stomach churning. She'd given them everything she had. Now came the part where Tyler Hayes decided whether she was credible enough to act on. And if he decided she wasn't, Melissa pushed the thought away. She'd deal with that if it happened. Tyler's office was exactly what Melissa expected: floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that probably cost more than her car, the kind of space designed to intimidate and impress. He was standing at the window when they entered, his back to them, phone pressed to his ear. "I understand that, Richard, but I'm telling you, I need that information by tomorrow morning at the latest." His voice was sharp, controlled. "I don't care what you have to do to get it. Call in favors, pay for expedited searches, whatever it takes. I need to know if there's any truth to these allegations before I sign anything." He hung up, turned to face them. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. The confident businessman from this morning had been replaced by someone who looked exhausted and troubled. "Melissa, sit." She sat. Rachel remained standing near the door, like a sentinel. Tyler picked up a tablet from his desk, scrolled through something. "I read what you wrote. Every word." And then I made some calls. Melissa's heart hammered. And? And I can't find death certificates for Gloria Martinez or Thomas Brennan in the county records. Which means either those names are fake or the deaths were recorded differently than you remember. The floor seemed to drop out from under Melissa's chair. No, those were the names. I'm sure of it. Or, Tyler continued, his expression unreadable, the records have been sealed or altered, which would itself be evidence of a cover-up. Melissa exhaled shakily. You think I'm telling the truth? I think something is wrong at that hospital. Whether it's what you described or something else, I don't know yet. But my walkthrough today was enlightening. How so? Tyler sat on the edge of his desk, studying her. Dr. Whitmore was nervous. Subtly, professionally nervous, the kind most people wouldn't notice. But I've spent my career reading people, and he was definitely nervous. He kept redirecting the conversation whenever I asked about incident reporting procedures or patient outcome metrics. And when I specifically asked to see records of any adverse events in the past year, Linda Vance told me those records were being digitized and weren't currently accessible. Convenient, Rachel muttered from her position by the door. Very convenient, Tyler agreed. I also noticed that several of the staff members we passed seemed surprised to see Dr. Whitmore giving a tour personally. One nurse actually asked him if everything was okay, like it was unusual for him to be walking the floors during a weekday. It is unusual, Melissa said. Dr. Whitmore spends most of his time in surgery or in administrative meetings. He doesn't do tours. That's usually Linda Vance's job. So why was he there today? Because he wanted to control the narrative. Make sure you only saw what he wanted you to see. Tyler nodded slowly. That's what I thought, too. Which brings me to my next question. If what you're alleging is true, how widespread is this? Is it just Whitmore and Vance, or are we talking about systemic institutional rot? Melissa hadn't let herself think about that question. It was too big, too overwhelming. I don't know. The file I saw was specifically Dr. Whitmore's notes, his cases, his cover-ups. But for something like this to work, to actually keep it buried for this long, you'd need more people involved. Medical record staff to alter documentation, board members to approve settlements, legal team to draft the NDAs. It can't just be two people. A conspiracy. Or just institutional self-preservation. Hospitals protect themselves. That's not conspiracy theory, that's just how the system works. Bad outcomes get blamed on individual practitioners instead of systemic problems. Settlements get paid quietly to avoid public scrutiny. It's not evil masterminds in a back room. It's just bureaucracy protecting bureaucracy. Tyler was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then he turned to Rachel. Status on Richard's background checks? He's pulling financial records now. Should have preliminary results by tonight. Full workup by tomorrow afternoon. Good. I also want Tyler's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned, then answered. This is Tyler Hayes. Melissa watched his expression change as he listened to whoever was on the other end. The exhaustion faded, replaced by sharp alertness. When did this happen? A pause. And they're sure? Another pause, longer this time. No, don't do anything yet. I'm coming down there now. He hung up, looked at Melissa with an expression she couldn't quite read. That was Detective Morgan. He made some preliminary inquiries based on what I told him earlier. Apparently, the State Medical Board received an anonymous complaint about Mercy General 2 months ago. Allegations of unreported adverse events and improper incident documentation. Melissa's breath caught. 2 months ago? What happened with it? The complaint was investigated and dismissed as unsubstantiated. The investigators' report said all requested documentation was provided by the hospital and showed full compliance with state reporting requirements. They covered it up, Melissa breathed. Someone else tried to report them, and they covered it up. Or the complaint was baseless and properly dismissed, Tyler said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe that. Either way, it means you're not the first person to notice something wrong. which makes your story more credible but also more complicated. Why more complicated? Because if the state medical board already investigated and found nothing wrong, going to them again with the same allegations isn't going to accomplish anything. We'd need new evidence, hard evidence, the kind that can't be explained away or buried under bureaucratic process. Melissa felt something cold settle in her stomach. You mean we need the file, the actual physical file I saw? Do you think it still exists? I don't know. Maybe. Dr. Whitmore might have destroyed it, or he might have hidden it somewhere he thinks is safe. Either way, I don't have access to his office or his files anymore. Tyler and Rachel exchanged a look. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication that made Melissa nervous. What? She asked. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Tyler said slowly, that I'm scheduled to do one more walkthrough tomorrow. A final inspection before the signing on Monday. And during that walkthrough, I could ask to see specific areas of the hospital, including administrative offices and record storage. You want to search for the file. I want to verify your claims. If that file exists, if there's any physical evidence of what you're describing, I need to see it. And if Dr. Whitmore has already destroyed it, then we look for other evidence. Financial records showing unusual settlement payments. Personnel files showing disciplinary actions that were buried. Anything that supports your version of events. Melissa shook her head. They're not just going to let you dig through their records. They'll say it's confidential, that you don't have access until after the sale closes, that, actually, they will let me. Tyler's expression hardened into something determined and slightly dangerous. Clause 17 of the purchase agreement gives me full access to all hospital records and facilities for the purpose of final due diligence. They can't refuse without breaching the contract and killing the deal. They'll stall, find excuses, let them try. I can be very persistent when I want to be. Rachel spoke up from the doorway. This is risky, Mr. Hayes. If they figure out what you're looking for, they could destroy evidence before we find it. Then I'll have to make sure they don't figure it out. Tyler looked at Melissa. How well do you know the hospital's layout? Record storage? Administrative offices? Anywhere files might be kept? Pretty well. But I'm not going to be there tomorrow. After I left you at the hospital this morning, after I was seen in your car, there's no way they're going to let me just waltz back in like nothing happened. Actually, Tyler said, I was thinking the opposite. I think you should be there, openly. As my consultant, Melissa stared at him. You're what? You're a nurse with 4 years of experience at Mercy General. It would be completely reasonable for me to bring you on as a temporary consultant during the transition period, to help me understand workflow, staff concerns, operational challenges. It's the kind of due diligence any smart buyer would do. They'll never believe that. They'll know I talked to you. They'll know exactly what I want them to know. That I hired you because I'm thorough. And I want insider perspective on the nursing staff. Which is true. Everything else is just reading between the lines. And if they try to object to me bringing in a consultant from their own hospital, that itself looks suspicious. It was bold. It was risky. It was possibly insane. It might actually work. If I do this, Melissa said carefully, if I walk back into that hospital with you tomorrow, they're going to know something's up. Dr. Whitmore isn't stupid. He saw me in your car. He knows I could have told you something. Let him know. Let him sweat. Nervous people make mistakes. Tyler's smile was sharp. Besides, if they do anything to you, fire you, threaten you, even look at you wrong, that's retaliation against a whistleblower, which is illegal and would itself be evidence of consciousness of guilt. Assuming I survive long enough for that to matter, I won't let anything happen to you. You have my word on that. Melissa wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this confident young millionaire could actually protect her from the institutional machine she was fighting against. But she'd seen too much, knew too well how easily people like her got crushed by people like Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance. Still, what choice did she have? She'd already thrown the stone. She couldn't unthrow it. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it. When's the walkthrough?" 10 a.m. Meet me in the lobby at 9:45. Tyler stood, extending his hand. "Thank you, Melissa, for having the courage to come forward. Whatever happens next, you did the right thing." Melissa shook his hand, feeling the calluses that suggested he wasn't just a guy who sat behind a desk all day. "I hope you're right." "So do I." Rachel walked her out, and as they descended in the elevator, she said quietly, "For what it's worth, I believe you. What you wrote this afternoon, that wasn't the work of someone making things up. That was someone who saw something terrible and can't stop seeing it." "Thanks," Melissa managed. "I think, but be careful tomorrow. If they're willing to cover up patient deaths, they're willing to do a lot worse to protect themselves." The elevator doors opened. Melissa stepped out into the lobby, into the same space where she'd sat this morning waiting for Tyler Hayes, and felt like she'd aged a decade since then. 24 hours ago, she'd been a nurse trying to decide whether to speak up. Now she was a whistleblower about to walk back into the lion's den. She just hoped she'd make it out alive. Dr. Raymond. Whitmore stood in his office at Mercy General, staring at his phone, trying to decide whether to make the call he knew he needed to make. The walkthrough had gone well. Tyler Hayes had asked intelligent questions, seemed genuinely impressed with the facility, and hadn't raised any red flags. Everything was still on track for the signing ceremony Monday. Except for one thing. That nurse, Melissa Torres, in Tyler Hayes' car this morning, talking to him for God knows how long before the walkthrough even started. What had she told him? Whitmore picked up his phone, scrolled to Linda Vance's number. She answered on the second ring. "We need to talk," he said. "About Melissa Torres." "The floor nurse? What about her?" "She was in Tyler Hayes' car this morning. Before the walkthrough, I saw her through the window. Silence on the other end. Then, are you sure?" "Positive. I don't know what she said to him, but she's been acting strange lately. Asking questions about records management. Staying late in the filing room." "You think she found something?" It wasn't a question. Linda Vance didn't ask questions when she already knew the answer. "I think it's possible," Whitmore said carefully. "And if she did, if she told Hayes, then we have a problem." "A big problem? What do you want me to do?" Another pause. Whitmore could hear papers rustling, imagined Linda sitting in her pristine office, calculating angles, weighing options. "Nothing yet," she said finally. Hayes seemed fine during the walkthrough. If Torres told him anything concerning, he would have shown it. "We proceed as planned. But Raymond, yes? Make sure that file is somewhere no one will ever find it. Burn it if you have to. Already done." "Good. And keep an eye on Torres. If she makes any more moves, I want to know immediately." The call ended. Whitmore sat in his office, looking out at the hospital he'd worked at for 15 years, and tried not to think about how everything could fall apart. The sale would close Monday. 4 more days. Then Tyler Hayes would be the owner, and whatever happened after that would be his problem. 4 more days. They just had to hold it together for 4 more days. Melissa didn't sleep that night either. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Vanessa's soft breathing from the other side of their tiny bedroom. They shared the space Melissa on the full-sized bed, Vanessa on a twin mattress on the floor that they'd dressed up with fairy lights and posters to make it feel less like poverty and more like a sleepover that never ended. Her daughter deserved better than this. Deserved her own room, her own space, a mother who didn't bring danger home like an uninvited guest. What was she doing? Tomorrow morning, she'd walk into Mercy General Hospital with Tyler Hayes. She'd smile at colleagues who might already know she'd betrayed them. She'd pretend everything was fine while looking for evidence that could send people to prison. And if Dr. Whitmore or Linda Vance even suspected what she was really doing there, Melissa rolled onto her side, pulling the thin blanket tighter. The apartment's heating was inconsistent at best, and tonight it had decided to barely work at all. She could see her breath in the faint light from the street lamp outside. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "This is Rachel Kent, Mr. Hayes's assistant. Just confirming tomorrow, 9:45 a.m. in the hospital lobby. Dress professionally. You're officially a consultant now." Right, a consultant. Making what, $200 an hour? More? Whatever Tyler Hayes paid consultants, it was probably more than she made in a week of nursing, except she wasn't really a consultant. She was bait, or a witness, or possibly just a woman who'd made a terrible mistake and was about to pay for it in ways she couldn't even imagine yet. She typed back, "I'll be there." Another buzz, almost immediately. "Mr. Hayes asked me to tell you something. He said if at any point tomorrow you feel unsafe, any point at all, you give me a signal, and we're done. We walk out immediately. You don't have to do this if you don't want to." Melissa stared at the message for a long time. She could still back out. Tell Tyler Hayes she'd changed her mind, that she was too scared, that he'd have to find evidence some other way. He'd probably still investigate. Maybe he'd find something. Maybe he wouldn't. But either way, she'd be out of it, safe. Except she'd never be safe, would she? Not really. Not knowing what she knew. Not living with the knowledge that she'd almost done the right thing, but chickened out at the last second. "I want to do this," she typed. "I need to do this. Okay, see you tomorrow." Melissa set her phone down and closed her eyes, knowing sleep wouldn't come, but hoping for it anyway. She must have dozed off at some point, because the next thing she knew, her alarm was blaring and gray morning light was filtering through the curtains. 6 a.m. 3 hours until she had to be at the hospital. 3 hours to prepare to walk into a war zone. Vanessa was already awake, sitting cross-legged on her mattress with a book open in her lap. She looked up when Melissa stirred. "Big day?" Her daughter's voice was quiet, careful. "Yeah, baby." "Big day. Are you scared?" Melissa sat up, ran a hand through her tangled hair. There was no point lying. Vanessa would see through it anyway. "Terrified." "But you're doing it anyway." "But I'm doing it anyway." Vanessa nodded slowly, processing this with the seriousness of someone much older than 11. "That's what brave means, right? Being scared but doing it anyway? Where'd you hear that?" "You told me. Last year, when I had to give that presentation in front of the whole class and I thought I was going to throw up." Had she said that? Melissa couldn't remember. The last year was a blur of double shifts and overdue bills and trying to be everything Vanessa needed while feeling like she was failing at all of it. "Well, I was right," Melissa said, pulling her daughter into a hug. "And you were brave then, and I'm going to try to be brave now." "You're the bravest person I know, Mom." Something cracked in Melissa's chest. She held Vanessa tighter, breathing in the strawberry shampoo smell, memorizing this moment. "Just in case. I love you so much," she whispered. "Love you too. Now go shower. You smell like stress." Melissa laughed, despite everything, pulled back to see Vanessa grinning at her. "When did you get so mouthy?" "I learned from the best." They went through their morning routine breakfast, backpacks, the walk down to the bus stop. Except this morning, Melissa wasn't wearing scrubs. She had on the same outfit from yesterday. Black slacks, white blouse, thrift store blazer. Her armor for walking into battle. The other parents at the bus stop gave her curious looks. Melissa Torres, who usually showed up in scrubs or sweats, depending on her shift schedule, was dressed like she had somewhere important to be. She ignored them. Let them wonder. By tomorrow, the whole neighborhood would probably know what she'd done anyway. The bus pulled up. Vanessa climbed the steps, then turned back one more time. "Be careful, Mom." "Always am." No, you're not. But today, actually be careful. Okay? Okay. The bus pulled away. Melissa stood there longer than necessary, watching it disappear around the corner, then turned and walked to her car with the strange sensation of walking towards something she couldn't come back from. Tyler Hayes arrived at Mercy General Hospital at exactly 9:45, stepping out of a different car than yesterday, a silver SUV instead of the black sedan. Less conspicuous, maybe. Or maybe he just liked variety in his ridiculously expensive vehicles. Melissa was waiting in the lobby, trying to look confident and professional, and not at all like a woman who'd spent the last 2 days having a nervous breakdown in slow motion. Ms. Torres. Tyler's greeting was formal, professional. To anyone watching, they were just businessman and consultant. Nothing more. Thank you for meeting me. Shall we? Rachel was there too, carrying a tablet and wearing an expression that suggested she was ready for anything. They'd clearly done this before, walked into potentially hostile situations, and acted like they owned the place. Melissa fell into step beside them, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone in the lobby could hear it. The receptionist, Kelly, who Melissa had shared countless coffee breaks with, looked up as they approached. Her eyes widened when she saw Melissa. Melissa? What are you? I thought you weren't scheduled until tonight. Change of plans, Melissa said, keeping her voice steady. I'm consulting on the transition. Mr. Hayes wanted someone from the nursing staff to provide insight on operational workflow. Kelly's expression suggested she knew that was only part of the story, but she nodded. Dr. Whitmore and Ms. Vance are waiting for you in the executive conference room. 3rd floor. Of course they were, waiting in their territory, ready to control the narrative. They took the elevator up in silence. Melissa watched the numbers climb 1, 2, 3, and tried to slow her breathing. She'd been in this hospital hundreds of times. Thousands. She knew every hallway, every shortcut, every place where the floor tiles didn't quite meet right. But it had never felt like enemy territory before. The elevator doors opened. Down the hall, through the glass walls of the conference room, Melissa could see Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance. They were talking to each other, but both looked up the moment the elevator chimed. Dr. Whitmore's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes when he saw Melissa. Recognition, wariness, maybe fear. Good, Tyler pushed open the conference room door with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his right to be anywhere. Dr. Whitmore, Ms. Vance, good morning. I hope you don't mind. I've brought a consultant along for today's walkthrough. Melissa Torres. She's a nurse here, and I wanted insider perspective on staff operations and potential transition challenges. Linda Vance stood, her smile perfectly professional and completely cold. She was a woman in her late 50s, with steel-gray hair cut in a severe bob, and the kind of gaze that could freeze water. How thorough of you, Mr. Hayes. Though I'm surprised Ms. Torres didn't mention this arrangement to her supervisor. We like to be kept informed when our staff take on outside consulting roles. My fault entirely, Tyler said smoothly. I reached out directly and asked her to keep it confidential until we formalized the arrangement. I didn't want to disrupt hospital operations with premature announcements. I see. Linda's eyes moved to Melissa, and there was nothing warm in that gaze. Nothing friendly, just cold assessment. Ms. Torres, I trust this arrangement won't interfere with your regular duties? I've cleared my schedule for today, Melissa said, surprised by how steady her voice was. And going forward, I'll make sure any consulting work happens on my own time. Going forward, Dr. Whitmore repeated. He'd been silent until now, just watching the exchange like a chess player trying to anticipate moves. So this is an ongoing arrangement, not just for today? That depends on how today goes, Tyler said before Melissa could answer. Now, shall we begin? I'd like to start with the records department. I want to understand your documentation systems, incident reporting protocols, that sort of thing. The room went very quiet. Linda and Dr. Whitmore exchanged a look quick, almost imperceptible, but Melissa saw it, saw the communication passing between them. The question, what does he know? The records department? Linda's smile never wavered. Certainly, though I'm not sure how that relates to your transition planning. It's mostly administrative minutiae. I'm interested in administrative minutiae. A hospital is only as good as its systems, and I want to understand what I'm inheriting. Of course, though I should mention that many of our records are currently being digitized. The physical files are somewhat disorganized during the transition. That's fine. I don't need everything to be perfect. I just want to see how the system works. There was no good way for them to refuse. Not without making it obvious they were hiding something. Linda smiled tightly and stood. Then let's begin the tour. They walked through corridors that Melissa knew by heart, past patient rooms and nursing stations where her colleagues looked up in confusion as she passed. Not in scrubs, walking with the man about to buy their hospital. One of them, Carol Jefferson, actually did a double-take. Melissa kept her eyes forward, trying not to think about what they were all thinking. Traitor. Sellout. What is she doing? The records department was in the basement, a windowless maze of filing cabinets and boxes that smelled of old paper and neglect. A single staff member, an older woman named Dorothy, who Melissa had spoken to maybe twice in 4 years, sat at a desk near the entrance, eating lunch from a plastic container. She looked up in surprise as their group entered. Ms. Vance? Dr. Whitmore? Is everything just showing Mr. Hayes our filing systems? Linda said smoothly. Please, continue with your lunch. Dorothy looked uncertain but nodded, watching them with open curiosity. Tyler walked deeper into the room, Rachel beside him, both of them scanning the rows of filing cabinets. Melissa followed, hyper-aware of Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance flanking them like guards. What's your retention policy for incident reports? Tyler asked, running his finger along a row of cabinet labels. How long do you keep physical copies? 7 years for standard documentation, Linda said. Longer for certain types of cases. And where would those be filed? By date? By patient name? It depends on the type of record. Patient files are alphabetical. Incident reports are filed chronologically by department. Tyler stopped in front of a cabinet labeled Surgical Confidential. He tried the drawer. Locked. May I? He looked at Linda expectantly. She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Then, those files contain sensitive patient information. Under HIPAA, I can't just, I'm the prospective owner, Tyler interrupted gently. And the purchase agreement grants me access to all hospital records for due diligence purposes. I'm not asking to read patient charts. I just want to see how the filing system is organized. Linda's jaw tightened, but she pulled a key ring from her pocket and unlocked the drawer. Tyler pulled it open. Inside were dozens of files, neatly labeled, color-coded, perfectly organized. He pulled one out at random, opened it, scanned the contents. His expression revealed nothing. But Melissa saw his finger pause on something, saw him read a line twice, saw the slight tension in his shoulders. He'd found something. Maybe not the smoking gun, but something. Interesting, he said mildly, closing the file and returning it to the drawer. Your documentation is very thorough. We pride ourselves on compliance, Linda said, and Melissa heard the edge underneath the professional tone. The warning, don't push too hard. Tyler moved to another cabinet. And this one? Administrative files, budget reports, staff evaluations, that sort of thing. Also locked, also containing confidential information. But I can see it? The silence stretched too long. Finally, Linda said, Of course. Though I'm not sure what you're hoping to find, Mr. Hayes. If you have specific concerns about our record-keeping, I'd be happy to address them directly. No specific concerns. Just due diligence. Tyler's smile was pleasant, but Melissa saw the steel underneath it. As I'm sure you understand, $40 million is a significant investment. I want to be absolutely certain I know what I'm buying, Dr. Whitmore finally spoke. Perhaps this would go faster if you told us what you're looking for. We could pull relevant files, save everyone time. That's kind of you, but I prefer to browse. You never know what you might learn when you're not looking for anything specific. It was a chess match played out in polite language and professional smiles, each side probing, testing, looking for weaknesses. And Melissa stood in the middle of it, trying not to give away how terrified she was. Tyler spent 20 minutes going through files, asking questions, making notes on his phone. Rachel photographed labels and filing systems. Linda and Dr. Whitmore watched it all with expressions that grew increasingly tense. Then Tyler pulled open a drawer that Melissa recognized, the one where she'd hidden the red file, the one that had been empty when she'd checked the next day. He paused, staring at the contents. "This drawer is mostly empty," he observed, "but the label says it should contain surgical incident reports from last year. Are those files being digitized?" "Likely," Linda said. Her voice was still smooth, but Melissa heard the strain. "As I mentioned, we're in the middle of a system transition." "Convenient timing." "I beg your pardon?" Tyler looked up, his expression innocent. "Just noting the timing. You're selling the hospital right in the middle of digitizing your records. Must make the transition more complicated. We started the digitization project 6 months ago, long before we decided to sell." "Of course." Tyler closed the drawer. "Well, I think I've seen enough here. What's next on the tour?" Linda visibly relaxed. "I thought we could see the updated surgical suites." "Actually," Tyler interrupted, "I'd like to see Dr. Whitmore's office." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dr. Whitmore stiffened. "My office? Why?" "Because you're the chief of surgery. Understanding how the clinical leadership operates is important to me. I want to see how you organize case files, how you track outcomes, that sort of thing. Most of my case files are digital now. Then it should be quick. Unless there's a reason you'd prefer I didn't see your office?" Tyler's tone was light, curious, but the implication was clear. Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance exchanged another look. Melissa watched it happen, the silent communication, the weighing of options. Refuse and look suspicious, or agree and risk exposing something they didn't want exposed. "Of course not," Dr. Whitmore said finally. "Though I should warn you, it's rather cluttered at the moment. I've been meaning to organize." "I don't mind clutter." They left the records department, Dorothy staring after them in confusion. The walk to the surgical floor was silent, tense, everyone caught in the gravity of what was unspoken. Dr. Whitmore's office was on the 4th floor, at the end of a corridor lined with photos of past surgical staff. He unlocked it with hands that Melissa noticed were not quite steady. The office was not cluttered. It was meticulously organized shelves lined with medical texts, a desk with nothing on it but a computer and a single pen, filing cabinets that looked like they'd been arranged by a professional organizer. Tyler walked in, eyes scanning everything. "Very neat. You said it was cluttered?" "I may have overstated that." Tyler walked to the filing cabinet behind the desk. "May I?" "Those are confidential patient files, which I have the right to review under our agreement." Tyler's pleasantness was wearing thin now. "Dr. Whitmore, I get the sense you're uncomfortable with this inspection. If you'd prefer to reschedule, no." Dr. Whitmore's voice was sharp, then softer. "No, that's fine, but I must insist that any patient information you see remains confidential." "Of course." Tyler opened the top drawer. It was empty, except for a few pens and paper clips. The second drawer, empty. The third drawer, also empty. Someone had cleaned house. Recently. Maybe even this morning, after they found out Melissa would be accompanying Tyler on this walkthrough. Tyler closed the last drawer and turned to face Dr. Whitmore. "Your filing cabinets are empty. As I said, most everything is digital now. Then where's your computer backup? Your external drives? In IT storage. We have a secure server. I'd like to see it. That would require authorization from our IT director, and he's not available today. Then make him available. Tyler's patience finally cracked, just a little. Dr. Whitmore, Ms. Vance, I'm getting the distinct impression that you're trying to prevent me from seeing something. Which is your right, I suppose. But it's also my right to walk away from this deal if I feel like I'm not getting full transparency. The words hung in the air like a threat, or a promise. Linda Vance stepped forward, her smile gone now. Mr. Hayes, I don't appreciate what you're implying. We've been nothing but cooperative. Have you? Because, from where I'm standing, every time I ask to see records, they're suddenly being digitized or in storage or unavailable. Every time I want access to something specific, there's a convenient excuse. I'm a reasonable man, Ms. Vance, but I'm not a fool. No one is suggesting you are. But you're making accusations based on, I'm not making accusations. I'm asking questions, and the fact that those questions make you this defensive is telling me more than you probably wanted to. Melissa's heart was racing. This was it, the moment where everything either broke open or fell apart. Dr. Whitmore cleared his throat. Mr. Hayes, perhaps we should discuss this in private. He glanced at Melissa. Without your consultant present. Why? Because she's the one who told me to ask these questions? Tyler's expression hardened. She's a nurse at this hospital, Dr. Whitmore. She has every right to be concerned about what happens after the sale. And if her concerns have merit, then I need to know about them before I sign anything. What concerns? Linda's voice was ice. What exactly has Ms. Torres been telling you? That's between me and my consultant. She's our employee. Not right now, she's not. Right now, she's working for me. And if you have a problem with that, take it up with your lawyers. The confrontation was spiraling. Melissa saw it happening, saw Dr. Whitmore's face going red, saw Linda Vance's hands clenching into fists. This wasn't going to end well, Mr. Hayes, Rachel said quietly from the doorway. You have a call. It's Richard. He says it's urgent. Tyler looked frustrated but nodded. Excuse me. He stepped out into the hallway with Rachel, leaving Melissa alone with Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance. The door closed, and suddenly, Melissa was looking at two people whose professional masks had completely fallen away. What did you tell him? Linda's voice was low, dangerous. What lies did you feed that boy? I didn't lie about anything. You violated patient confidentiality. You accessed records you had no business seeing. That's illegal, Ms. Torres. You could lose your license. Go to prison. Not if what I saw was evidence of a crime. Melissa was shaking, but held her ground. Not if you were covering up negligence and patient deaths. Dr. Whitmore moved closer, and Melissa suddenly realized how alone she was. How trapped. The office door was closed. Tyler and Rachel were in the hallway, and she was in here with two people who had every reason to want her silenced. You're making a terrible mistake, Dr. Whitmore said, his voice soft, almost sad. You don't understand what you're interfering with. The complexity of hospital administration, the legal protections we operate under. I understand that people died because of mistakes you made and covered up. Patients die every day in hospitals. That's the nature of medicine. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, outcomes are poor. Gloria Martinez didn't die despite your best efforts. She died because you used contaminated instruments and didn't stop surgery when you knew the sterilization equipment was malfunctioning. The words were out before Melissa could stop them. The name she'd promised herself she wouldn't mention, the detail that proved she'd seen the file. Dr. Whitmore went very still. How do you know that name? Because I saw your notes. I read what you did. And I'm not going to let you sell this hospital to an innocent man and make it his problem when the truth comes out. The truth? Linda laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about truth, Ms. Torres? The truth is that you're a floor nurse who thinks she understands things far above her pay grade. The truth is that you're about to destroy your career and possibly face criminal charges for violating patient privacy. The truth is that nobody is going to believe you over us. Tyler Hayes believes me. Tyler Hayes is a child playing at business. He'll believe whatever seems dramatic and interesting until his lawyers explain reality to him. Then he'll realize you're just a disgruntled employee with delusions of grandeur. The door opened. Tyler stepped back in, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Rachel looked concerned. "Is everything all right in here?" Tyler asked, looking between the three of them. "Fine," Linda said smoothly, her mask back in place. "We were just explaining to Ms. Torres the serious nature of the accusations she's making." "Accusations that I'm taking very seriously," Tyler said. "In fact, that was my lawyer on the phone. He's found some interesting things in his background research. Settlement payments to multiple families over the past 2 years, always just under the threshold that would require state medical board notification, always with NDAs attached, always processed through a third-party legal firm to keep them off the hospital's main financial records." The room went silent. That's standard risk management," Dr. Whitmore said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Hospitals settle nuisance claims all the time." "Nuisance claims? Is that what you call patient deaths resulting from negligence? You can't prove I can prove the settlements exist. I can prove they were hidden from standard financial disclosures. And, combined with the testimony of my consultant here, who saw documented evidence of a systematic cover-up, I'd say I have enough to warrant a much deeper investigation." Tyler pulled out his phone. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call Detective Morgan at the precinct. He's going to send officers over here to secure records and prevent any more convenient digitization or storage transfers. And then the State Medical Board is going to get a very detailed complaint, complete with evidence that their previous investigation was stonewalled." "You're making a mistake," Linda said. Her voice was still controlled, but Melissa heard the panic underneath. "You're going to kill this deal over the paranoid delusions of a single nurse. I'm protecting myself from buying a hospital that's one lawsuit away from bankruptcy and criminal investigation." Tyler looked at her evenly. "The deal is off. And if I find out you knowingly withheld material information during the due diligence process, I'll sue you for fraud on top of everything else." "You'll never work in healthcare again," Dr. Whitmore said, and for the first time he sounded desperate. "Do you understand that? You walk away from this, you make these accusations, and your reputation is finished. My reputation can survive a near miss with a corrupt hospital. Can yours survive what's about to come to light?" Tyler took Melissa's arm gently. "We're leaving. Now." They walked out of the office, down the hallway into the elevator. As the doors closed, Melissa caught one last glimpse of Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance standing in the corridor, their faces masks of fury and fear. Then they were descending, and Tyler was pulling out his phone, already making calls. "Richard, it's time. Call Detective Morgan. Tell him we have probable cause, and I'm requesting an immediate investigation." The elevator doors opened on the ground floor. "Rachel, get every photo and note you took today backed up to the cloud. Multiple copies. I want a paper trail that can't be erased." They walked through the lobby. People stared. Melissa saw Kelly at the reception desk, eyes wide. Saw Carol Jefferson coming out of a patient room, her expression shocked. She'd just blown up her entire life, and she'd do it again in a heartbeat. They pushed through the front doors, out into the cold morning air. Tyler's car was waiting at the curb. "Get in," he said to Melissa. "You're not safe here." "Not anymore," she got in. The car pulled away from Mercy General Hospital, and Melissa looked back through the rear window at the building she'd worked in for 4 years. She'd never step foot in it again as an employee. But if Tyler Hayes was right, if the investigation found what she thought it would, Find she might just help, save lives even as she destroyed her own. The police arrived at Mercy General Hospital 47 minutes after Tyler's call. Melissa watched it unfold from Tyler's office, where he'd brought her after leaving the hospital. Rachel had set her up with coffee and a comfortable chair by the window, from which she had a clear view of the street below, but, more importantly, was far away from whatever chaos was erupting at the hospital. Tyler was on his third phone call in the last half hour, pacing behind his desk with the kind of focused energy that suggested he did his best thinking while moving. I understand that, Detective Morgan, but I'm telling you there's probable cause for document preservation at minimum. If they haven't started destroying records yet, they will as soon as they realize the deal is off. Pause. Yes, I'll have my lawyer send over everything we documented this morning. But you need to move fast. He hung up, immediately dialed another number. Richard? Status? Melissa sipped her expensive coffee, the kind that came from beans that probably cost more per pound than her entire weekly grocery budget, and tried to process what had just happened. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. She'd warned Tyler Hayes, convinced him to investigate, and now the authorities were getting involved. The cover-up that Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance had worked so hard to maintain was about to be ripped open and exposed to daylight. So why did she feel like she was going to throw up? Ms. Torres? Rachel appeared beside her chair with a bottle of water. You look pale. When's the last time you ate? Melissa tried to remember. Yesterday? This morning? The sandwich at the coffee shop that she couldn't recall tasting? I don't know. I'm ordering lunch. What do you want? I'm not hungry. That wasn't the question. Rachel pulled out her phone. Sandwich? Salad? Soup? Whatever's fine. Sandwich it is. Turkey, okay? Melissa nodded, not really caring. Food seemed like an abstract concept right now. Something that existed in a world where her biggest problem was making rent on time instead of wondering if she'd just made herself a target for people desperate enough to commit evidence tampering or worse. Tyler finished his call and came over to where she was sitting. He pulled up a chair, sitting down so they were at eye level. How are you holding up? I don't know. Ask me again when I can feel my hands. He glanced down at her hands, which were indeed trembling. That's adrenaline. It'll pass. You seem calm. I've had practice. This isn't my first time dealing with people who've lied to me about important things. He leaned back, studying her. You did good in there. When they cornered you in that office, you didn't back down. I didn't have much choice. There's always a choice. You could have recanted, said you made a mistake, thrown yourself on their mercy. They were giving you that option. And let them get away with what they did? Let you walk into that trap? Melissa shook her head. No. Some things you can't unknow. Some things you can't ignore just because it's convenient. Tyler smiled slightly. You sound like someone I used to know. My mentor, back when I was starting my first company. He used to say the same thing. Some things you can't ignore, Tyler, even when ignoring them would be the smart play. What happened to him? He died. Heart attack at 53. Probably because he spent his entire life fighting battles instead of choosing which hills were worth dying on. Tyler's expression darkened. I thought I'd learned from his mistakes. Thought I'd figured out how to be successful without being self-destructive. And then I almost bought a hospital that would have destroyed everything I've built. But you didn't. You stopped in time. Because you warned me. If you hadn't shown up in my office lobby, if you hadn't had the courage to speak up. He trailed off, shaking his head. I would have signed those papers Monday, 4 days from now, and 6 months after that. When the lawsuit started and the investigations began, I'd be the one facing criminal charges for negligent hospital administration. The weight of that settled over both of them. How close it had been. How easily it could have gone the other way. What happens now? Melissa asked quietly. Now? Now we wait for the investigation to unfold. Detective Morgan is good, thorough, careful. won't rush to conclusions, but also won't be intimidated by powerful people. If there's evidence to find, he'll find it. And if Dr. Whitmore already destroyed everything, then we have the documentation from today. The empty filing cabinets, the suspicious gaps in records, your testimony about what you saw. It's not perfect, but it's something. And combined with the financial records my lawyer found those hidden settlement payments, it should be enough to at least launch a formal investigation. Rachel returned with a tablet. Mr. Hayes, you need to see this. Tyler took the tablet, scanned whatever was on the screen. His jaw tightened. When was this posted? 20 minutes ago. It's already been picked up by 3 local news outlets. Tyler turned the tablet so Melissa could see. It was a press release from Mercy General Hospital. Mercy General Hospital responds to unfounded allegations. In response to recent false accusations made by a terminated employee, Mercy General Hospital wishes to clarify that all patient care at our facility meets or exceeds state and federal standards. The individual in question, former nurse Melissa Torres, was dismissed today for violations of patient confidentiality and professional misconduct. Her subsequent allegations appear to be motivated by retaliation for her termination. We take patient safety seriously and have fully cooperated with all regulatory oversight. Any suggestion otherwise is defamatory and will be addressed through appropriate legal channels. Mercy General remains committed to serving our community with excellence and integrity. Melissa stared at the screen, the words blurring together. Terminated. Misconduct. Retaliation. Defamatory. They'd fired her. Of course, they'd fired her. She'd known it was coming, but seeing it in writing, seeing them lie so blatantly about the timeline she hadn't been terminated before making allegations. She'd made allegations and then been terminated made rage bloom hot in her chest. "They're lying," she said, her voice shaking. "I wasn't fired before I talked to you. I was working this morning. I was on their schedule for tonight's shift." "I know. We have timestamps proving that. Rachel photographed your hospital badge this morning when we entered together. The metadata will show you were an active employee at that time." Tyler's expression was grim. They're getting ahead of the narrative, trying to discredit you before the investigation can find anything concrete. Will it work? Depends on what the investigation turns up. If Detective Morgan finds solid evidence, it won't matter what they say about you. The facts will speak for themselves. And if he doesn't find anything, if they've destroyed everything, Tyler met her eyes steadily. Then it becomes your word against theirs. And I won't lie to you, Melissa, that's a hard fight to win. They have institutional credibility, lawyers, PR teams. You're a single mother who just lost her job and has no physical evidence to support her claims. The reality of her situation crashed over her like a wave. She'd known it would be bad. She'd known there would be consequences. But hearing it laid out so starkly made it real in a way it hadn't been before. She was unemployed, possibly unemployable if Mercy General succeeded in painting her as a disgruntled employee who made false accusations. Her nursing license could be in jeopardy if they pursued charges about patient confidentiality violations. And she had a daughter to support on savings that would maybe last 3 months if she was very careful. "Hey." Tyler leaned forward, his voice firm. "Don't spiral. We're going to fight this. I'm getting you a lawyer, a good one. Someone who specializes in whistleblower protection. And we're going to document everything. Build a timeline, make it impossible for them to claim you were terminated before you came forward. That costs money I don't have. Consider it my investment in making sure the people who almost defrauded me don't get away with it. Besides, you saved me from making a $40 million mistake. Legal fees are the least I owe you." Melissa wanted to argue, to say she couldn't accept charity, that she'd figure it out on her own. But the truth was, she couldn't figure it out on her own. She was in over her head, fighting people with resources she couldn't match. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. "Thank you," she said quietly. don't thank me yet. This is going to get worse before it gets better." As if on cue, Melissa's phone buzzed. Then again, and again, a flood of notifications all at once. She pulled it out, stared at the screen in horror. Text messages. Dozens of them. From colleagues at the hospital. Is it true? Did you really get fired? Melissa, what happened? Everyone's talking about it. I can't believe you'd make false accusations. I thought we were friends. You need to stop this before you destroy the hospital. People depend on us. And then, from Carol Jefferson, call me now. We need to talk. Melissa's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. They all knew. Everyone at the hospital had seen that press release, and now they all thought she was a liar, a troublemaker, someone who'd betrayed them. "Don't respond to any of those," Tyler said, watching her face. "Not yet. Anything you say right now can and will be twisted against you. Rachel, can you draft a statement for Ms. Torres? Something brief that doesn't admit wrongdoing, but also doesn't engage with their narrative? On it." Rachel moved to a computer, fingers already flying across the keyboard. Melissa set her phone down, face down so she couldn't see the notifications still pouring in. "They hate me. Everyone I've worked with for 4 years. They all think I'm lying. They think what they've been told to think. Once the investigation reveals the truth, if the investigation reveals the truth. You said it yourself, if Dr. Whitmore destroyed the evidence, it's my word against theirs." Tyler didn't contradict her. Because he couldn't. Because it was true. The office door opened, and a man in his 50s entered. Richard Kent, Tyler's lawyer. He looked grim. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance just filed for an emergency injunction to prevent police from accessing hospital records without a formal warrant. They're claiming patient privacy protections under HIPAA. Can they do that?" Melissa asked. "They can try. Whether it'll work depends on the judge." Richard set his briefcase down, pulled out a folder. But it buys them time. Time to move records, destroy evidence, get their story straight. Detective Morgan can still pursue a warrant, but that takes days, not hours. Tyler swore under his breath. So they're circling the wagons. Full fortress mode. They've also retained Jefferson and Associates as their legal counsel. That's a big gun firm. Expensive. Someone's taking this threat very seriously. "Good," Tyler said. "Means we're over the target. People don't hire expensive lawyers unless they're scared. Or unless they're preparing for a very aggressive counterattack." Richard looked at Melissa. "Ms. Torres, I need to ask you some hard questions, and I need completely honest answers. Because if there are any skeletons in your closet, any past disciplinary actions or complaints, or anything that could be used to discredit you, we need to know about it now, before they bring it up in court or to the press." Melissa's mind raced through her employment history. "Nothing. I've never had a disciplinary action. My performance reviews have all been good to excellent. No complaints from patients or colleagues on my record. Any personal issues? Financial problems, substance abuse, mental health crises? I'm broke, if that's what you're asking. Single mother, nursing salary, expensive city. But I pay my bills on time. No bankruptcy, no addiction, no psychiatric hospitalizations. I'm just a regular person who saw something wrong and tried to report it." Richard nodded, making notes. "Okay, that's good. That makes you a sympathetic plaintiff if this goes to court. But I need you to understand something. They're going to dig into your life. Every social media post, every Google search, every person you've ever had a conflict with. They're going to look for anything they can use to paint you as unreliable or unstable. Let them look. I've got nothing to hide." "Everyone has something to hide, Ms. Torres. The question is whether what you're hiding is worse than what they're hiding." The brutal honesty of it stung, but Melissa appreciated it. She didn't need people sugarcoating the reality of what she'd walked into. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Now we prepare," Richard said. I'll draft whistleblower protection paperwork and file it with the state labor board. That legally protects you from retaliation. Though the hospital will argue you weren't a whistleblower, you were a terminated employee making false allegations. We'll also prepare a defamation suit in case they continue making false statements about you in the press. I can't afford Tyler's covering the legal fees. Consider it an investment in truth and justice, or whatever helps you sleep at night. Richard's tone was brisk, professional. We'll also reach out to the state medical board directly, provide them with your testimony and the documentation Tyler collected this morning. Force them to reopen their investigation. They already dismissed one complaint 2 months ago, Melissa pointed out. Then they'll have to explain why they missed what we're about to show them. Either they were negligent in their investigation, or the hospital successfully obstructed it. Either way, it looks bad for someone. Tyler's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned. "It's Detective Morgan," he answered, putting it on speaker. "Detective, tell me you have good news." "Define good news." The detective's voice was gravelly, tired. "I'm at the hospital now. The administrator, Linda Vance, is being very cooperative on the surface, showing me around, answering questions, very professional. But every record I ask for is either in storage, being digitized, or requires special authorization to access. Stonewalling. Polite stonewalling. She's not refusing anything directly, just making it very difficult to actually see anything meaningful. I'm going to need that warrant after all, Mr. Hayes. And given that they've filed an injunction, that's going to take at least a few days. Days they'll use to destroy evidence. That's my concern, yes. Which is why I've assigned officers to monitor the building. If anyone tries to remove large quantities of documents, we'll know about it. But I can't stop them from digitizing, or accidentally spilling coffee on the wrong filing cabinet, or any number of other ways information can disappear. Tyler's jaw clenched. So what you're saying is we might have already lost. I'm saying it's going to be an uphill battle. But I've seen people lose uphill battles before because they got overconfident. Sometimes desperation makes people sloppy. Keep digging on your end. If you find anything concrete, financial records, former employees willing to talk, families who signed those NDAs and might be willing to break them, that gives me more leverage to push for the warrant. Understood. Thank you, Detective. The call ended. Tyler looked at Richard. Find me those families, the ones who signed NDAs. If we can get even one of them to go on record about what really happened, I'm on it. Though convincing someone to break an NDA is legally complicated. Then uncomplicate it. We're running out of time. Richard nodded and left, already pulling out his phone. Tyler turned to Melissa. I need you to make a list. Every nurse, doctor, staff member at that hospital who might have seen something suspicious. Anyone who might have noticed unusual patient outcomes, gaps in records, anything. People who might be willing to talk if they knew they weren't alone. Most of them think I'm crazy right now. You saw that press release. Most of them are scared. There's a difference. Fear makes people quiet, but it also makes them pay attention. Someone at that hospital knows something. We just have to find them before they decide it's safer to stay silent. Melissa pulled out her phone, stared at the flood of messages still coming in. Angry messages, confused messages, Carol's increasingly urgent demands that she call back. What if Carol knew something? They'd been friends, not close, but friendly. They'd covered shifts for each other, complained about management together, shared the dark humor that kept nurses sane. Would Carol talk? Or would she choose her job over the truth? Only one way to find out. I need to make a call, Melissa said. Tyler nodded. Rachel will set you up in a conference room. Privacy and quiet. Take your time. Melissa followed Rachel down the hall to a small room with glass walls and a door that closed. Through the glass, she could see Tyler and Rachel working, making calls, strategizing. She sat down, pulled up Carol's number, and stared at it for a long moment. This could go very badly. Carol could refuse to help, could tell Melissa exactly what she thought of her for destroying the hospital's reputation, could even report the call back to Linda Vance, or she could be an ally. A witness! Someone else who'd seen something wrong and was just waiting for someone else to be brave first. Melissa took a breath and hit dial. Carol answered on the first ring. Melissa, what the hell is going on? Carol, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. You first. Is what they're saying true? Did you really make false allegations against Dr. Whitmore? No, I made true allegations, and they fired me for it. Silence on the other end. Then quieter. What did you see? A file. Dr. Whitmore's personal notes on cases that went wrong. Covered up mistakes. Settlements to keep families quiet. 7 cases I saw clearly. Probably more I didn't have time to read. Jesus, Melissa. I know how it sounds. But Carol, I swear to you, I'm not making this up. I saw it. Names, dates, settlement amounts, all of it documented in his own handwriting. Another long pause. Melissa could hear voices in the background on Carol's end, the sounds of the hospital, continuing on like nothing had happened. Gloria Martinez, Carol said finally. That was one of the names? Melissa's heart jumped. Yes. How did you? Because I was her nurse. Post-op recovery. I was the one who noticed she was spiking a fever way faster than normal. I told Dr. Whitmore, told him something was wrong, that we should check for infection. He brushed me off, said she was fine, just recovering slower than expected. By the time someone listened to me, she was septic. She died 2 days later. Carol. I tried to file an incident report, documented everything in my notes. But when I went to submit it, I was told it had already been filed by Dr. Whitmore himself. And when I looked at his version, it was completely different from what I'd written. Made it sound like an unavoidable complication, nothing anyone could have prevented. Why didn't you say anything? To who? I'm a floor nurse. He's chief of surgery. Who's going to believe me? And I had 3 kids to feed and a mortgage. I couldn't afford to lose my job over a fight I couldn't win. The pain in Carol's voice was visceral. She'd known. She'd seen what happened to Gloria Martinez and known something was wrong. And she'd stayed silent because speaking up felt impossible. Just like Melissa had almost done. I'm not staying silent anymore, Melissa said. And I need to know, will you back me up? If investigators ask, if this goes to court, will you tell them what you just told me? Melissa, I could lose my job, my license, everything. Or you could help stop them from doing it to someone else. Gloria Martinez died because Dr. Whitmore prioritized his schedule over her safety. How many more patients are going to die if we don't stop this? She heard Carol's breathing on the other end, ragged and uncertain. I have to think about my kids. I have a kid too. An 11-year-old daughter who's going to watch her mom either fight for what's right or give up because it's too hard. What example do you want to set for yours? It was a low blow. Melissa knew it. But she also knew Carol, knew she was a good person who cared about doing right, who had been trapped by the same fear and helplessness that had almost kept Melissa silent. Let me talk to my family, Carol said finally. Let me think about it. But Melissa, be careful. If what you're saying is true, if there really is a cover-up this big, the people involved are going to do everything they can to protect themselves. And people who are desperate do desperate things. I know. But I'm not backing down. I believe you. I just hope you survive it. The call ended. Melissa sat in the conference room, staring at her phone, feeling something that might have been hope. Carol hadn't said yes. But she hadn't said no either. And if Carol was willing to talk, maybe others would be too. Maybe Melissa wasn't as alone in this as she felt. She stood up, walked back to Tyler's office. He looked up when she entered. Well, I might have a witness. A nurse who was there when Gloria Martinez died, who tried to file an incident report and had it altered by Dr. Whitmore. Tyler's expression sharpened. Will she go on record? She's thinking about it. She has kids, a mortgage. She's scared. Understandable. Richard will reach out, see if we can offer her whistleblower protection too. One witness corroborating your story changes everything. And if she decides it's too risky, then we keep looking. Keep fighting. We didn't come this far to give up now. Melissa nodded, feeling the exhaustion settling into her bones. She'd been running on adrenaline for hours, and now that it was fading, the reality of everything crashed over her. She'd lost her job, possibly her career. Her reputation was being destroyed in real time by a hospital with lawyers and PR teams, and the fight to prove she'd been telling the truth was just beginning. But she'd also found Tyler Hayes, found someone who believed her, who was willing to fight beside her, found Carol, who might be brave enough to speak up. And somewhere in that hospital, in filing cabinets and digital records, and the memories of staff who'd seen things they weren't supposed to see, was the truth. They just had to find it before it disappeared forever. "What now?" she asked. Tyler looked at her, and she saw respect in his eyes. "Now we go to war, and we don't stop until they're exposed or we're destroyed trying." Melissa thought about Vanessa, who'd be getting home from school in a few hours. Who'd want to know how today went? Who deserved a mother who fought for what was right, even when it was terrifying? "Okay," she said. "Let's go to war." Melissa picked up Vanessa from the after-school program at 6:30, 2 hours late and feeling like she'd aged a year in a single day. Her daughter took one look at her face and asked, "That bad?" "Yeah, baby, that bad." They drove home in silence. Melissa's phone had been buzzing non-stop, more messages from former colleagues. A few from reporters who'd somehow gotten her number. One from her landlord, asking if the rumors about her being fired were true, and reminding her that rent was due in 5 days. 5 days. Melissa had $847 in her checking account and $200 in savings. Her rent was $1,450. Even if she dipped into savings, she'd be broke before the week was out. Don't think about it now. One crisis at a time. They climbed the 3 flights of stairs to their apartment. The hallway smelled like someone was cooking curry, and Melissa's stomach reminded her she'd barely eaten all day. The turkey sandwich Rachel had ordered had sat in her stomach like a stone. Inside, their small apartment felt simultaneously like a sanctuary and a trap. Safe but suffocating. Home, but not nearly secure enough to protect them from what was coming. "Mom?" Vanessa was standing in the Kit Kent doorway, backpack still on her shoulders. "Are we going to be okay?" Melissa wanted to say yes, wanted to reassure her daughter that everything would work out, that they'd be fine, that this was just a temporary setback. But she'd promised herself a long time ago that she wouldn't lie to Vanessa. Not about the important things. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I lost my job today. The hospital fired me for speaking up, and they're telling everyone I'm a liar, that I made false accusations. But you didn't?" "No, I didn't. But proving that is going to be hard. And expensive. And we might have to make some difficult choices in the next few months." Vanessa finally dropped her backpack, came over, and hugged Melissa tight. At 11, she was already almost as tall as her mother. When had that happened? "We've been through hard times before," Vanessa said against her shoulder. "We'll figure it out. When did you get so grown up?" "I learned from the best." They stood like that for a long moment, mother and daughter, holding each other in a tiny kitchen in a tiny apartment, preparing for whatever storm was coming. Then Melissa's phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. "Ms. Torres?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "My name is Jennifer Wallace. I'm a reporter with the Metro Daily. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions about the allegations against Mercy General Hospital." Melissa's first instinct was to hang up. Tyler and Richard had both told her not to talk to press without running it by them first. But then Jennifer said, "I've been investigating Mercy General for the past 6 months, following up on that anonymous complaint to the State Medical Board, and I think you might have just given me the missing piece I've been looking for." Melissa's pulse quickened. What kind of missing piece? Not over the phone. Can we meet? Tomorrow morning, somewhere public. You can bring a lawyer if you want. I just want to hear your story. And in exchange, I'll tell you what I found. How do I know you're not working with the hospital? Trying to get me to say something you can twist? You don't. But you can Google me. I've spent the last 15 years exposing medical fraud and institutional corruption. I don't work for hospitals. I work for the people they hurt. Melissa made a split-second decision. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., the coffee shop on 5th and Madison. I'm bringing someone with me. Fair enough. I'll see you then, Miss Torres. The call ended. Melissa immediately texted Tyler. Reporter from Metro Daily wants to meet tomorrow. Says she's been investigating the hospital for 6 months. Should I talk to her? The response came back almost instantly. Absolutely not. At least not without Richard present. Give me her name. I'll have her checked out. Jennifer Wallace on it. Don't commit to anything until we know she's legitimate. Melissa set her phone down and realized Vanessa was watching her with wide eyes. A reporter? Her daughter asked. Maybe. Or maybe someone trying to trick me into saying something stupid. You're not stupid, Mom. No, but I'm exhausted and scared, and those are conditions where smart people make stupid mistakes. Melissa opened the refrigerator, stared at the sparse contents. How about pasta for dinner? With the jarred sauce? With the jarred sauce. They made dinner together, a simple routine that felt almost normal. Boil water, cook pasta, heat sauce. Set the table with mismatched plates and silverware from 3 different sets. While they ate, Melissa's phone continued its assault of notifications. She finally turned it face down, unable to handle any more messages from people who thought she was either a hero or a traitor, with very little middle ground. Emma's mom asked if you're really a whistleblower. Vanessa said between bites of pasta. She saw the news. What did you tell her? That my mom did the right thing and some people are mad about it. Was that okay? Melissa felt her throat tighten. That was perfect. Some of the other moms were talking too. I heard them. They were saying... Vanessa trailed off, looking down at her plate. What were they saying? That you're probably lying. That nurses don't know enough to accuse doctors of stuff. That you're just angry because you got fired. The words stung, even secondhand. These were people in Melissa's neighborhood. Parents she saw at school events. People she'd lived near for 4 years, and they thought she was a liar. People believe what they want to believe, Melissa said carefully. And sometimes it's easier to believe that institutions are trustworthy than to accept that they might be corrupt. It's scary to think that hospitals, places we're supposed to trust with our lives, might not always have our best interests at heart. But you know the truth. I know what I saw, and I'm going to fight to prove it, no matter what people say about me. Vanessa nodded slowly, processing this. Then, good. Because I believe you, and if anyone at school says anything bad about my mom, I'm going to tell them they're wrong. Baby, you don't have to fight my battles. Yes, I do. You're fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. The least I can do is fight for you. Melissa reached across the table, squeezed her daughter's hand. When did you get so wise? I told you. I learned from the best. That night, after Vanessa went to bed, Melissa sat at their tiny Kit Kent table with her laptop open, doing something she knew she probably shouldn't do, but couldn't stop herself from doing anyway. She Googled herself. The results were brutal. Mercy, general nurse, makes unsubstantiated allegations. Against hospital former employee claims cover-up. Hospital calls, accusations, defamatory healthcare worker, fired for violations, then makes shocking claims, and then, from one of the tabloid-style medical news sites, disgruntled nurse tries to tank hospital, sail with conspiracy theory. Each article repeated the same narrative. She was a disgruntled employee. The hospital had been forced to terminate her for misconduct. Her allegations were unsubstantiated and appeared to be retaliation. Only one article from Jennifer Wallace at the Metro Daily took a different angle. Whistleblower allegations at Mercy General raise questions about previous investigation. A. Fired nurses' claims about covered-up medical errors may explain why an anonymous complaint 6 months ago was so quickly dismissed. Sources close to the state medical board investigation say the hospital provided documentation that satisfied regulatory requirements, but the timing of a sudden sale to a private buyer raises new concerns. It wasn't exactly supportive. Wallace was being careful, using words like allegations and claims instead of stating anything as fact. But at least she wasn't calling Melissa a liar. Melissa clicked through to Wallace's author page. She'd written dozens of investigative pieces over the years: nursing home abuse, pharmaceutical fraud, medical device companies hiding safety data, hospital billing schemes. This was someone who knew the healthcare industry's dark corners. Someone who might actually help, or someone who knew exactly how to extract information and twist it for a better story. Melissa closed her laptop. Too tired to think anymore. Tomorrow, she'd meet with Jennifer Wallace. Tomorrow, she'd find out if Tyler's lawyer could verify Carol's willingness to testify. Tomorrow, she'd figure out how to pay rent or have the conversation about moving somewhere cheaper. Tomorrow. Tonight, she just needed to sleep. She lay down on the couch, giving Vanessa the bed as always, and closed her eyes, listening to the sounds of the building settling around her, pipes groaning, someone's television through the walls, the distant sound of traffic, normal sounds, safe sounds. She clung to them as she drifted off, trying not to think about how quickly normal could become unrecognizable. At the same time, 15 miles away in a much nicer neighborhood, Dr. Raymond Whitmore sat in his home office with a glass of scotch he wasn't drinking and a phone he was staring at like it might explode. She saved the note, didn't share it anywhere, just kept it for herself, a reminder of why this mattered, why they had to keep fighting even when it felt impossible. Her mom was brave. Vanessa would be brave, too, even if she was scared, especially if she was scared, because that's what brave meant. The coffee shop on 5th and Madison was crowded at 9 a.m., filled with the morning rush of professionals grabbing caffeine before heading to offices where they'd spend the day doing jobs that probably didn't involve risking everything they'd built. Melissa arrived early, accompanied by Tyler and Richard. They'd picked her up from her apartment at 8:30 in Tyler's SUV, and the drive had been spent going over strategy. Let her do most of the talking, Richard had advised. Reporters love to fill silence. The more she talks, the more she might reveal about what she knows. But don't give away anything we're not ready to make public, Tyler added. Anything you say can and will be used in print. Now they sat at a corner table, 3 cups of expensive coffee in front of them, waiting for Jennifer Wallace to arrive. She showed up at exactly 9 a.m., a woman in her mid-40s, with short gray hair, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of presence that suggested she'd spent years walking into rooms where she wasn't welcome and refusing to leave until she got what she came for. Ms. Torres, Jennifer extended her hand. Thank you for meeting me. And you must be Tyler Hayes and Richard Kent. I recognize you from the business pages. They shook hands, the ritualistic dance of people sizing each other up. Jennifer sat down, pulled out a notebook, actual paper, not a phone or tablet. Melissa found that oddly reassuring. There was something grounded about someone who still took notes by hand. I'll get right to the point, Jennifer said. 6 months ago, the State Medical Board received an anonymous complaint about Mercy General Hospital. Allegations of unreported adverse events, altered documentation, and systematic cover-up of medical errors. The complaint was investigated and dismissed as unsubstantiated. We know, Tyler said. Detective Morgan told us. What you probably don't know is that I was the one who filed that complaint." Melissa's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "You?" "Not directly. I had a source, a former employee at Mercy General, who reached out to me with concerns about patient safety. She gave me enough information to file a complaint, but not enough to write a story. I needed more, so I filed anonymously with the medical board, hoping an official investigation would turn up additional evidence I could use. But it didn't," Richard said. "No, because the hospital provided documentation that satisfied the investigators. Clean incident reports, proper procedures, everything by the book. My source was convinced the documentation had been altered, but she couldn't prove it. And without proof, there was no story. Just accusations. What happened to your source?" Melissa asked quietly. Jennifer's expression darkened. She was fired 3 weeks after the medical board closed the investigation. Officially for poor performance, but the timing was suspicious. She tried to sue for wrongful termination, but the hospital had documented several minor infractions showing up late. Medication errors that she swears were fabricated. They'd built a paper trail specifically to justify firing her. She couldn't afford to fight it. Last I heard, she'd moved out of state and was working at a pharmacy. The parallel to Melissa's own situation was chilling. "So, when I saw the news about you yesterday," Jennifer continued, looking at Melissa, "when I saw that another nurse was making allegations about Mercy General, I knew it wasn't coincidence. 2 whistleblowers in 6 months? That's a pattern. That's a story. What do you need from me?" Melissa asked. "Everything. On the record, if you're willing. What you saw, when you saw it. Who was involved. Names, dates, specific incidents. I need enough detail that when I write this story, the hospital can't dismiss it as vague accusations from a disgruntled employee." "They've already dismissed her as exactly that," Tyler pointed out. "They fired her and put out a press release calling her allegations defamatory. Which is why I need documentation. Ms. Torres, do you have anything in writing? Emails, photos of documents, anything that proves you saw what you claim you saw?" Melissa shook her head, feeling the weight of that failure. "No, I saw the file in Dr. Whitmore's office. I read it. But I didn't take pictures or make copies. I didn't think—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "I didn't think anyone would believe me without proof. But I also didn't think anyone would believe me if I stole confidential documents." "But you remember details," Jennifer said. "It wasn't a question. Patient names, dates, the kind of specific information that someone making things up wouldn't know." "Yes. I wrote it all down for Tyler's lawyer. 7 cases I saw clearly, with names and approximate dates. I want those names. And I want to track down the families, see if any of them are willing to talk about the settlements they received. If even one family confirms they were paid to stay quiet about a medical error, that corroborates your entire story." "The settlements included NDAs," Richard interjected. "Non-disclosure agreements. If family members break them, they could face legal action." "Maybe, but NDAs can't stop someone from reporting a crime. And if what Ms. Torres is describing is accurate systematic cover-up of negligence resulting in patient deaths, that's criminal. The families might not realize they have legal grounds to speak up." Tyler leaned forward. "What's your timeline on this story? How fast can you move?" "Depends on what I find. If I can get one family on record, plus Ms. Torres's testimony, plus the financial documentation you've found, I could have something publishable in 48 hours. But I won't rush it. This needs to be airtight. One factual error and they'll use it to discredit the entire piece." "We don't have 48 hours," Melissa said urgently. "Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance are destroying evidence right now. Every day that passes, more files disappear. More witnesses get intimidated into silence. Detective Morgan is trying to get a warrant, but that could take days. Then we work fast." Jennifer flipped open her notebook, pen poised. "Start from the beginning, the day you first saw the file. Tell me everything." For the next 2 hours, Melissa talked. She described the night she'd been asked to help organize records, the moment she'd opened Dr. Whitmore's red folder, the horror of reading case after case, where mistakes had been made and then buried. She recited names, dates, the specific details that had burned themselves into her memory. Jennifer took notes rapidly, occasionally stopping to ask clarifying questions. Tyler and Richard listened in silence, letting Melissa tell her story without interruption. When she finally finished, her throat was raw and her coffee was cold. Jennifer set down her pen. Gloria Martinez. She was the surgical patient who died from septic shock? Yes, I'm going to start there. It was the most recent case, which means the family's memory will be freshest. And if they were paid a settlement, that money trail should be traceable. She looked at Richard. How fast can you get me documentation of the settlement payments your investigator found? I'll have them to you by this afternoon. But you need to understand those payments were run through outside legal firms. They're not directly traceable to the hospital without subpoena power. I don't need direct traceability. I need enough to establish a pattern of suspicious payments coinciding with patient deaths. Let the readers connect the dots, Tyler spoke up. If you publish this story, the hospital is going to come after you. And they're going to come after Melissa even harder. Are you prepared for that? I've been sued twice in my career. Both times by institutions trying to bury stories I was right to publish. Both times I won. Jennifer's expression was steel. I'm not afraid of Mercy General's lawyers. And Ms. Torres, if you're willing to go on record, I'll make sure your story is told fairly. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise it'll be honest. Melissa thought about her daughter, about the rent she couldn't pay, about the colleagues who thought she was a liar, and the hospital that had thrown her away like garbage. Then she thought about Gloria Martinez, about Thomas Brennan, about all the others whose names she'd read in that file. I'll go on record, she said. Whatever it takes, Jennifer nodded, something like respect flickering in her eyes. Then let's bring them down. By the time they left the coffee shop, the plan was in motion. Jennifer would track down the Martinez family, using public records to find their contact information. Richard would provide documentation of the suspicious settlement payments. Tyler would coordinate with Detective Morgan to make sure the police investigation and the journalistic investigation didn't step on each other's toes, and Melissa would wait. Again. The hardest job of all, Tyler drove her home, Rachel following in a second car to pick him up. In the back seat, Melissa stared out the window at the city passing by, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. You did good back there, Tyler said from the driver's seat. Telling your story. That couldn't have been easy. It needed to be done. Still, not everyone would have the courage. Everyone keeps saying that word, courage, like I had a choice. Melissa's voice was flat, exhausted. But I didn't, really. Once I saw that file, once I knew what they'd done, I couldn't unknow it. I couldn't just go back to work and pretend everything was fine, so I don't think it's courage. I think it's just inevitable. Like falling off a cliff. You don't choose to fall. You just do. You chose to walk to the edge, Tyler pointed out. You chose to open that file in the first place. Yeah, I guess I did. They pulled up in front of Melissa's building. Tyler put the car in park, turned to face her. My accountant is setting up a fund to cover your expenses during the investigation. Rent, groceries, whatever you need. It's not payment for testimony, Richard was very clear about that. It's just support. So you can focus on fighting without worrying about how you're going to eat. Melissa stared at him. Tyler, I can't. You can, and you will. Consider it my apology for almost walking into a trap that would have made your sacrifice meaningless. If I'd signed those papers, everything you did would have been for nothing. This way, at least you're not going broke while we take them down. How much? Enough. Don't worry about the details. Just accept the help. Pride warred with necessity. Pride lost. Melissa nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Good. Richard will have the paperwork to you by tomorrow. In the meantime, Tyler reached into his glove compartment, pulled out a business card. That's my personal cell number. Not my assistant's line, not my office. Direct to me. If anything happens, if you feel threatened, or if someone from the hospital contacts you, you call immediately. Understand? Tyler, you don't have to. Yes, I do. They went after you because of me. Because you warned me. That makes you my responsibility. I'm not your responsibility. I made my own choice, and I'm making mine. Take the card. Melissa took it, slipping it into her pocket. Thank you. For everything. I mean it. Thank me when this is over and they're in handcuffs. She climbed out of the SUV, watched it pull away, then trudged up the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment. Inside, everything looked exactly as she'd left it. Dishes in the sink from last night's pasta dinner. Vanessa's backpack by the door. The couch where she'd slept badly, plagued by nightmares about filing cabinets that burst into flames and witnesses who vanished like smoke. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. This is Carol. Can we talk? In person, not over the phone. Melissa's heart jumped. She typed back, when and where? Tonight after my shift. There's a park 2 blocks from the hospital. Meet me there at midnight. Midnight. Carol's shift ended at 11:30. She was giving herself 30 minutes to make sure no one from the hospital followed her. I'll be there, Melissa sent back. The reply came immediately. Come alone. And, Melissa, be careful. People are scared. And scared people do dangerous things. Tyler returned to his office to find chaos waiting for him. His phone had 17 missed calls. His email inbox had exploded with messages from board members, investors, and business journalists, all wanting to know the same thing. Why had he walked away from the Mercy General deal? Rachel met him at the elevator with a tablet full of message summaries and an expression that said she'd been handling damage control all morning. Your board wants an emergency meeting. Your investors want a conference call. And someone leaked to the business press that you pulled out of the hospital acquisition at the last minute. The speculation is running wild, everything from financial problems to cold feet to a better offer from a competitor. Let them speculate. I'm not making any public statements until after Jennifer Wallace's story runs. That could be days, maybe longer. Then they'll wait. Rachel followed him into his office. Mr. Hayes, I understand you're trying to protect Ms. Torres and do the right thing here. But you have other obligations, other businesses, other investors, people who depend on you to make rational decisions. This is a rational decision, is it? You're burning bridges, damaging your reputation, potentially exposing yourself to legal liability, all for a hospital you're not even buying and a nurse you barely know. Tyler set his briefcase down, turned to face his assistant. Rachel, do you know what would have happened if I'd bought that hospital? You would have owned a struggling medical facility with potential upside. I would have owned a ticking time bomb. And when it exploded, and it would have exploded, maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, I'd be the one left holding the blame. My name on the lawsuits, my reputation destroyed. Maybe even criminal charges if they could prove I knew about the cover-up and did nothing. But you didn't know. I would have if I'd done my due diligence properly. If I'd listened to my instincts instead of being so eager to move fast. If I'd been less arrogant about my ability to fix broken systems. Tyler's voice was hard. Melissa Torres saved me from making a mistake that would have cost me everything. The least I can do is stand with her while she pays the price for that warning. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then, you really believe her? You believe the hospital is covering up negligence? I believe she saw something that terrified her enough to risk her entire life speaking up. I believe the hospital's reaction, immediate termination, public character assassination, legal threats, is exactly what guilty people do when they're cornered. And I believe that if we dig deep enough, we're going to find bodies buried all over Mercy General. Metaphorical bodies. Let's hope they're metaphorical. His desk phone rang. Rachel answered it, listened, then held it out to him. Detective Morgan. He says it's urgent. Tyler took the phone. Detective, tell me you have good news. Depends on your definition of good. I got the warrant. We're executing it tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Full forensic team, document seizure, the works. Judge agreed there was sufficient probable. 'Cause based on the financial irregularities your lawyer found. Relief flooded through. Tyler. That's excellent news. It would be if I wasn't worried. They've already destroyed everything worth finding. My officers reported suspicious activity at the hospital late last night. Someone was in the records room until nearly 2 a.m. When we asked about it, we were told it was routine digitization work. At 2 in the morning? My thoughts exactly. We're going in assuming most of the physical evidence is gone. But sometimes people get sloppy when they panic. We might get lucky and find something they missed. What can I do to help? Keep Miss Torres safe. I've got officers doing regular patrols past her building, but I can't provide full protection detail without more concrete evidence of threats. Tell her to be careful. Avoid going anywhere alone if possible. And if anyone from the hospital contacts her, anyone at all, I want to know about it immediately. Understood. And, Detective, thank you for taking this seriously. Thank me when we find enough evidence to prosecute. Right now, I'm just doing my job. The call ended. Tyler looked at Rachel. Cancel everything on my schedule for the next 3 days. This is my only priority. Everything? Everything. Tell the board I'll talk to them when I have more information. Tell investors the same thing. And Rachel, yes? Call building security. I want increased monitoring on all entrances. If anyone asks for me or tries to reach me who isn't on an approved list, I want to know about it. Paranoid, maybe. But I'd rather be paranoid than caught off guard. Rachel nodded and left to make the calls. Tyler sat at his desk, pulling up the financial documents Richard had compiled. Even looking at them again, the pattern was clear. Settlement payments that coincided with patient deaths. Legal fees that spiked suspiciously. Insurance premiums that should have triggered regulatory review, but somehow didn't. It was all there. The evidence of a systematic cover-up. They just had to prove it before the hospital destroyed what little remained. Midnight found Melissa standing in a small neighborhood park 2 blocks from Mercy General Hospital, her hands shoved deep in her jacket pockets, breath making small clouds in the cold air. She'd told Vanessa she was going to meet a friend. Not technically a lie. Carol had been a friend, or at least friendly. The park was deserted this time of night. Just a few swings, a rusty slide, and a basketball court where teenagers probably dealt drugs during the day. Street lamps cast pools of yellow light that didn't quite reach the shadows between them. Melissa chose a bench under one of the lamps, visible but exposed. Carol would see her before approaching, could scan for anyone else in the area. She didn't have to wait long. Carol appeared from the direction of the hospital, still in her scrubs, walking fast with her head down. She looked around the park twice before approaching the bench. "Are you alone?" Carol asked without preamble. "Yes. You?" "I think so. But I can't be sure. They're watching everyone now. Anyone who had contact with you, anyone who might know something. Linda Vance called me into her office this afternoon. Asked me about our conversation yesterday." Melissa's stomach dropped. "What did you tell her?" "That we talked about you being fired. That you seemed upset. That I told you I couldn't help you because I needed to keep my job." Carol sat down heavily on the bench. "I lied to my boss's face, Melissa. I've never done that before. And I'm terrified she knew I was lying. Carol, I'm sorry. I never meant to drag you into—" "Stop. Just stop. You didn't drag me into anything. I dragged myself in the minute I failed to report what happened to Gloria Martinez. I knew something was wrong. I knew Dr. Whitmore's incident report didn't match what I'd witnessed. And I stayed quiet because I was scared." Carol's voice cracked. "I've been carrying that guilt for months, wondering if other patients died because I didn't speak up. So don't apologize for giving me a chance to make this right. You'll testify? If this goes to court, Or to the medical board? I'll do more than that. Carol pulled a flash drive from her pocket. I made copies of my original notes from Gloria Martinez's case before they were edited in the hospital system. I kept a backup in my personal email, just in case. I don't know if it's enough, but it's something. Proof that the official record doesn't match what actually happened. Melissa took the flash drive with trembling hands. Carol, this is huge. This proves they altered documentation. It proves my notes were altered. It doesn't prove who did it or why, but combined with your testimony and whatever that reporter finds, maybe it's enough to show a pattern. Jennifer Wallace. Her name is Jennifer Wallace. She's going to try to contact you, if that's okay. She needs witnesses willing to go on record. Carol nodded slowly. I'll talk to her. But Melissa, you need to know something. There are others. Other nurses who've noticed things over the years. Unusual patient outcomes. Incident reports that disappeared. Families that seemed to vanish after bad results. Nobody wanted to say anything because speaking up meant getting fired and blacklisted. Exactly. But now that you've already taken that hit, now that the investigation is happening anyway, some people are reconsidering their silence. I'm not the only one. Hope bloomed in Melissa's chest, fragile but real. How many others? I've had quiet conversations with 3 other nurses. They're scared, but they're also angry. And if the investigation offers them protection, if they think they can testify without losing everything, they might talk. Give me their names. I'll pass them to Detective Morgan and Tyler's lawyer. They can offer whistleblower protection, legal support, whatever it takes. Carol pulled out her phone, typed something, then showed Melissa the screen. 3 names and phone numbers. Melissa photographed it with her own phone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. We still have to survive what's coming. Carol stood, looking around the empty park nervously. I need to go. My husband thinks I'm at work late. If he knew I was here, meeting with you, he wouldn't understand? He'd understand perfectly. That's what scares me. He'd tell me I'm doing the right thing and support me completely. And then we'd lose everything together. Carol's voice was thick with emotion. But I can't keep living with this guilt. I can't keep looking at myself in the mirror knowing I chose a paycheck over a patient's life. You didn't choose. Yes, I did. We all did. Every nurse who saw something wrong and stayed quiet. Every doctor who went along with the cover-up. Every administrator who approved those settlements. We all chose, and now we have to choose differently. Carol walked away, disappearing into the shadows between street lamps, heading back toward the hospital where her shift had officially ended 30 minutes ago. Melissa sat on the bench for a few more minutes, clutching the flash drive in her pocket, trying to process what had just happened. They had evidence now, real evidence. Carol's original notes proving documentation had been altered, the promise of other witnesses willing to come forward. Combined with Jennifer Wallace's investigation and Detective Morgan's warrant execution tomorrow morning, they might actually have a chance. Melissa stood, started walking back toward her car, parked 3 blocks away in a well-lit lot where she'd felt safe leaving it. She was halfway there when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. The street was empty, just shadows and street lamps and closed storefronts. She kept walking, faster now. The footsteps resumed, matching her pace. Melissa's heart hammered. She pulled out her phone, ready to call Tyler, call the police, call someone. A man emerged from an alley ahead of her, middle-aged, wearing a dark jacket, hands in his pockets. He didn't say anything, just stood there. Blocking her path, Melissa stopped. Behind her, the footsteps stopped too. Ms. Torres. The man ahead of her spoke quietly. You should go home. Stop making trouble. Nobody wants things to get ugly. Who are you? Someone who's paid to make problems go away. And right now, you're a problem. This was a threat, an actual, physical threat. Melissa's hands shook as she raised her phone. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. By the time they get here, I'll be gone. But the message will remain. Back off. Stop talking to reporters and lawyers. Let this investigation die quietly, or things will get worse for you and everyone you care about. Is that what Linda Vance sent you to say? The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Nobody sent me. I'm just a concerned citizen who thinks nurses should stick to nursing and leave hospital administration to the professionals. He turned and walked away, disappearing around a corner. Behind her, the second set of footsteps retreated into the darkness. Melissa stood frozen on the sidewalk, phone in hand, trying to remember how to breathe. They'd threatened her, actually threatened her, which meant they were desperate, which meant they were scared, which meant she was on the right track. But it also meant she was in danger, real danger. Melissa ran the rest of the way to her car, locked the doors the moment she was inside, and drove home with her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the steering wheel. She called Tyler from her apartment parking lot. He answered on the first ring. "Melissa, what's wrong?" "Someone just threatened me. A man. He knew my name, told me to back off, or things would get worse for me and everyone I care about." Silence. Then, "Where are you now?" "In my car. Outside my apartment. Stay there. I'm sending security. They'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't go inside until they arrive." "Tyler, I can't afford private security. You're not paying for it. Just stay in your car. Keep the doors locked." "And Melissa? This proves we're over the target. They wouldn't threaten you if they weren't terrified of what we're going to find." "I know. But I'm scared. I know. Me too. But we're not backing down. Not now." True to his word, 2 security guards arrived 8 minutes later in a black SUV. They escorted Melissa into her building, checked her apartment, and then positioned themselves in the hallway outside her door. Vanessa woke up when Melissa came in, bleary-eyed and confused. "Mom? What's happening?" "Who are those men in the hallway?" "Just some extra security." "Everything's fine." "You're shaking." "I'm fine." "You're not fine." Vanessa sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Mom, what happened?" Melissa sat on the edge of her daughter's mattress, took her hand, and made a decision. No more hiding the truth. No more pretending everything was under control. "Someone threatened me tonight. They told me to stop investigating the hospital. But I'm not going to stop, and that means things might get scarier before they get better. So I need you to promise me something. If anything happens, if anyone approaches you at school or tries to talk to you about me or about this investigation, you run. You find a teacher. You call Tyler Hayes. His number is on the card I left on the Kit Kent counter, and you don't talk to anyone until I get there. Understand?" Vanessa's eyes were wide, scared, but she nodded. "I understand." "Good. Now try to go back to sleep. Tomorrow's another day. And tomorrow, we fight back." But Melissa didn't sleep. She sat on the couch with all the lights on, watching the door, waiting for dawn. Tomorrow, Detective Morgan would execute the warrant. Tomorrow, Jennifer Wallace would start contacting the Martinez family. Tomorrow, the battle would truly begin, and Melissa would face it with security guards outside her door, a flash drive full of evidence in her pocket, and the knowledge that she'd already gone too far to turn back. They wanted her to stay, quiet. They'd made a terrible mistake. Because Melissa Torres was done being quiet, dawn broke over the city with the kind of gray light that made everything look washed out and unreal. Melissa stood at her apartment window, coffee in hand, watching the security guards change shifts in the hallway outside. She hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man from last night. Heard his voice? "Things will get worse for you and everyone you care about." Her phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Morgan's executing the warrant now. I'm heading over to observe. Want me to send a car for you?" Melissa thought about it. Part of her desperately wanted to be there, to watch as the police descended on Mercy General and seized the evidence that would prove she'd been telling the truth all along. But another part of her the part that was a mother first, and a whistleblower second knew she needed to be here. Vanessa would be waking up soon. She'd need breakfast, reassurance, normalcy, in a world that had become anything but normal. No. Keep me updated. I'll be here with V understood. Security stays with you until this is over. Non-negotiable. Thank you. Melissa set her phone down and went to make breakfast. Pancakes from a mix, because sometimes comfort food was the only thing that helped. She was flipping the second one when Vanessa emerged from their shared bedroom, hair tangled, eyes still heavy with sleep. "Are the guards still there?" her daughter asked. "Yeah, baby. They're staying for a while. Because of the man who threatened you. Because we're being careful." Vanessa sat at their small Kit Kent table, watching Melissa cook with an expression too serious for an 11-year-old. "Mom, when this is over, when they arrest the bad people and everyone knows you were telling the truth, will things go back to normal?" Melissa paused, spatula in hand. She wanted to say yes, wanted to promise that they'd get through this and life would return to what it had been before. But that would be a lie. "I don't think things will ever be exactly like they were before," she said carefully. "I lost my job. A lot of people think I'm a liar. Even after the truth comes out, some people will still believe what they want to believe. So we lost everything for nothing?" "No." Melissa turned off the stove, came to sit beside her daughter. "We didn't lose everything. We still have each other. And we gained something too. We proved that standing up for what's right matters. That speaking truth matters, even when it costs you something. Does it matter if nobody believes you? It matters because we know the truth. And that has to be enough sometimes. We can't control what other people think or say. We can only control what we do." Vanessa processed this, her young face thoughtful. Then, "I'm proud of you, Mom, even if nobody else is." "I'm proud." Melissa felt tears sting her eyes. "Thank you, baby. That means more than you know." They ate pancakes together while the morning news played in the background. 20 minutes in, the breaking news banner appeared. Breaking. Police execute search warrant at Mercy General Hospital. Melissa's heart jumped. She grabbed the remote, turned up the volume. A reporter stood outside the hospital, the building visible behind her in the gray morning light. Police descended on Mercy General Hospital at approximately 6 a.m. this morning, armed with a search warrant related to allegations of document tampering and cover-up of medical negligence. Hospital administrators have declined to comment, but sources close to the investigation say this warrant is the result of explosive accusations made by a former nurse who claims the hospital systematically covered up medical errors resulting in patient deaths. The camera cut to footage of officers entering the building, carrying boxes of equipment, then back to the reporter. The hospital's board of directors released a statement saying they're cooperating fully with the investigation and remain confident that no wrongdoing will be found. But this dramatic development raises serious questions about the hospital's practices and whether previous regulatory investigations were thorough enough. Melissa's phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, calls, news alerts. She ignored most of them, but when Tyler's name appeared, she answered immediately. "Are you watching?" he asked without preamble. "Yes." "What's happening? Did they find anything?" "Too early to tell. But Morgan's team is thorough. They're seizing computers, filing cabinets, everything. If there's evidence to find, they'll find it." Tyler paused. Jennifer Wallace's story just went live, too. Front page of the Metro Daily website. Whistleblower nurse exposes systematic cover-up at City Hospital. It's detailed, thorough, and damning. She got the Martinez family on record. Melissa's breath caught. They talked? They broke their NDA? With the help of a lawyer who explained that NDAs can't protect criminal activity. Mrs. Martinez confirmed she was paid $127,000 to sign an agreement saying she wouldn't. pursue legal action, or speak publicly about her mother's death. She provided copies of the settlement agreement, the NDA, everything. It's all in Jennifer's article. Oh my God. It gets better. Jennifer also got Carol Jefferson on record, and two other nurses whose names you gave me. They all corroborated parts of your story. The article is airtight, Melissa. You're not some crazy conspiracy theorist anymore. You're a credible whistleblower with multiple witnesses backing you up. Melissa felt her knees go weak. She sat down heavily at the kitchen table, Vanessa watching her with wide eyes. What about Dr. Whitmore and Linda Vance? Have they responded? Not officially. But I heard through back channels that Whitmore showed up at the hospital this morning and was immediately stopped by police. He's not allowed access to any records or documents while the search is ongoing. Linda Vance lawyered up and isn't talking to anyone. So we did it? We actually did it? We're not finished yet. Finding evidence is one thing. Building a prosecutable case is another. But yes, Melissa, you did it. You exposed them. Whatever happens next, the truth is out there now. They can't bury it anymore. After Tyler hung up, Melissa pulled up Jennifer Wallace's article on her phone. The headline alone made her chest tight. Whistleblower nurse exposes systematic cover-up at City Hospital. Multiple patients died after medical errors were hidden. Documents reveal she read it slowly. Every word a vindication of the last 3 days of hell. Jennifer had laid it all out. The 7 cases Melissa had seen in Dr. Whitmore's file, described in careful detail. Gloria Martinez's death, confirmed by her family and corroborated by Carol Jefferson's original nursing notes. The settlement payments, documented by Tyler's financial investigators. The suspicious gaps in hospital records that coincided with adverse patient outcomes. And then, in the second half of the article, Jennifer had traced the pattern back further. She'd found other families, other cases stretching back 3 years. Not just Dr. Whitmore's mistakes, but a hospital-wide culture of protecting reputation over patient safety. It was devastating. Thorough. Impossible to dismiss. As the ravings of a disgruntled employee, Melissa's phone rang again. An unfamiliar number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Torres? This is Maria Martinez. Gloria Martinez's daughter. Melissa's breath caught. Mrs. Martinez, I'm so sorry about your mother. Don't be sorry. Be proud. Because of you, because of what you did, my mother's death might actually mean something. She didn't die for nothing. She died because of negligence, and now everyone knows it. And maybe, her voice cracked, maybe that means other families won't have to go through what we went through. Tears streamed down Melissa's face. I wish I could have done more. I wish I'd found that file sooner, before you did enough. You did more than anyone else was willing to do. You risked everything to tell the truth about what happened to my mother. That's not nothing, Ms. Torres. That's everything. They talked for a few more minutes. 2 women connected by tragedy and the stubborn belief that truth mattered. When the call ended, Melissa sat at her kitchen table and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. The crushing weight she'd been carrying for days finally lifting. Vanessa came over, wrapped her arms around her mother. It's okay, Mom. It's going to be okay now. Yeah, baby. I think it is. The rest of the day unfolded in a blur of phone calls, interviews, and revelations. By noon, 3 more nurses from Mercy General had come forward, providing documentation of incidents they'd tried to report that had mysteriously disappeared from official records. By 2 p.m., the State Medical Board announced they were reopening their investigation into Mercy General with a much broader scope. By 4 p.m., Dr. Raymond Whitmore and Linda Vance had been placed on administrative leave pending the criminal investigation. And by 6 p.m., Detective Morgan called Melissa personally. We found it, he said, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. The file, or rather pieces of it. Someone tried to shred it, but they did a sloppy job. Our forensics team was able to reconstruct about 70% of the documents. It matches your description exactly. Patient names, dates, Whitmore's notes about covering up the incidents. Everything. Melissa closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. So you have evidence. Real, physical evidence. We have enough to charge Whitmore with evidence tampering at minimum. Probably more charges once we finish going through everything we seized. And we found email communications between Whitmore and Vance discussing the settlements, how to keep them off the books, how to discredit anyone who asked too many questions. They documented their own conspiracy. When will you arrest them? Soon. We're building the case carefully. These are serious charges against respected professionals. The district attorney wants everything airtight before we move. But I'd say within the week, you'll see arrests. Thank you, Detective, for believing me, for investigating. Thank you for having the courage to come forward. We couldn't have built this case without you. That night, Melissa and Vanessa ordered pizza, a luxury they couldn't really afford. But Tyler's emergency fund had been activated that afternoon, depositing $5,000 into Melissa's account with a note from his accountant that more would follow as needed. They ate on the couch, watching mindless TV, pretending for a few hours that everything was normal. The security guards had been reduced to one, stationed in the building lobby rather than right outside their door. The immediate threat seemed to have passed. "Mom?" Vanessa said during a commercial break. "What are you going to do now?" "For work, I mean." Melissa had been trying not to think about that. Her nursing license was still active, but her employment history now included terminated from Mercy General Hospital for alleged misconduct. Even though the allegations were false, even though she'd been proven right, that termination would follow her. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe I'll try to find work at another hospital. Maybe I'll do something different. Home health care, maybe? Or private nursing? Or maybe," a voice said from the doorway, "you could come work for me." Melissa jumped, turned to see Tyler Hayes standing in her apartment doorway, looking sheepish. The security guard stood behind him, apologetic. "Sorry, ma'am." "He said he was expected?" "It's fine," Melissa said, standing. "Tyler, what are you doing here? How did you even— Your security guard let me in. And I'm here because I have a job offer." Tyler stepped inside, and Melissa noticed he was carrying a folder. "Can we talk?" Vanessa grabbed her book. "I'll be in the bedroom." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Hayes." "Nice to meet you too, Vanessa. Your mom talks about you constantly." After Vanessa disappeared into the bedroom, Tyler sat at the kitchen table. Melissa joined him, curious and confused. "I've been thinking," Tyler said, "about what comes next, for both of us. I walked away from the Mercy General deal, but I'm still committed to fixing healthcare. Maybe more committed now that I've seen how broken it really is. Okay. I want to start a new venture, a watchdog organization, combined with a consulting firm. We'd work with hospitals that want to actually improve patient safety, help them implement better reporting systems, transparent incident documentation, real accountability, and we'd investigate hospitals that don't want to improve, be the external pressure that forces change." That sounds ambitious. It is, and it needs someone who understands healthcare from the inside. Someone who's proven they can't be intimidated or bought. Someone who puts patients first, even when it costs them everything. Tyler opened the folder, slid a paper across the table. "I want that someone to be you." Melissa stared at the document. It was a job offer. Director of Patient Safety and Advocacy. Salary, $85,000 per year. With benefits. "Tyler, I'm a floor nurse. I don't have experience running organizations or— You have experience standing up to powerful institutions and refusing to back down. You have experience seeing problems that everyone else is trained to ignore. And you have experience paying the price for doing what's right. That's the experience I need. I don't even have a college degree beyond my nursing certification. Then we'll get you one, paid for by the company. But Melissa, credentials aren't what I'm hiring you for. I'm hiring you for integrity, for courage, for the kind of moral clarity that can't be taught in business school." Melissa looked at the job offer, at the salary that was nearly double what she'd been making at Mercy General, at the title that suggested she'd be making real decisions, having real impact. "Can I think about it?" "Take all the time you need, but the offer stands regardless of what happens with the criminal investigation. This isn't payment for your testimony. This is me recognizing that you're exactly the kind of person who should be shaping healthcare policy." After Tyler left, Melissa sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Staring at the job offer, Vanessa emerged from the bedroom. "So, what did he want?" "He offered me a job. A good job. Better than the one I lost." "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. It feels like I'm profiting from this whole nightmare. Like I'm being rewarded for getting people in trouble." "Or," Vanessa said, sitting beside her, "you're being rewarded for doing the right thing, which is how it should work, but usually doesn't. So maybe this time, the universe decided to be fair." Melissa looked at her daughter, saw the wisdom there that shouldn't exist in someone so young. "When did you get so smart?" "I learned from the best." 1 week later, Melissa stood outside the courthouse downtown, watching as Dr. Raymond Whitmore and Linda Vance were led inside in handcuffs. The charges were extensive: evidence tampering, obstruction of justice, criminal negligence, fraud. The district attorney had announced that morning that they were pursuing criminal charges against both administrators, with the possibility of charges against several board members as well. Jennifer Wallace stood beside Melissa, camera crew filming the scene. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Seeing them arrested?" "Like justice," Melissa said quietly. "Not just for me, but for Gloria Martinez, for Thomas Brennan, for all the others whose deaths were treated like inconvenient paperwork problems instead of human tragedies. You know there are hospitals all over the country watching this case. You've started something much bigger than Mercy General. Good. Healthcare is broken in so many ways. If this case makes even one hospital think twice before covering up a mistake, if it makes even one nurse feel like they can speak up when they see something wrong, then maybe all of this was worth it." The interview was picked up by national news outlets. Suddenly, Melissa Torres wasn't just a local whistleblower, she was the face of a movement. Nurses from around the country reached out, sharing their own stories of being silenced, intimidated, or fired for trying to report safety concerns. Tyler's new organization, which they'd named the Patient Safety Alliance, was flooded with inquiries from hospitals wanting help improving their systems and from patients wanting investigations into questionable care. Melissa accepted Tyler's job offer. Her first act as Director of Patient Safety and Advocacy was to create a hotline for healthcare workers to report concerns anonymously, with legal protection and support if they chose to go public. Carol Jefferson became the Alliance's first field investigator, using her decades of nursing experience to identify red flags in hospital operations. And Gloria Martinez's family established a foundation in her name, dedicated to supporting families affected by medical negligence and pushing for stronger transparency laws in healthcare. 6 months after that terrible day when Melissa first saw Dr. Whitmore's file, she stood in a conference room at the Patient Safety Alliance headquarters, looking out at 20 hospital administrators who'd voluntarily come for training on incident reporting and transparency. "The culture of silence in healthcare doesn't protect patients," she told them. "It protects institutions, and institutions aren't the ones who die when mistakes are made. Patients die. Real people with families who love them, and futures that get erased because someone decided covering up a mistake was more important than preventing the next one." She clicked to the next slide, showing a photo of Gloria Martinez. Maria Martinez had given permission to use it. This is Gloria Martinez. She was 62 years old. She had 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and a garden she loved tending. She went into Mercy General Hospital for a routine surgery. She should have come home. Instead, She died because contaminated instruments were used and nobody stopped the procedure, even though they knew the sterilization equipment was malfunctioning. The room was silent. Uncomfortable. Good. They should be uncomfortable. Gloria's death was preventable, but preventing it would have required someone to speak up, to halt the surgery, to prioritize patient safety over surgical schedules. And the culture at that hospital made speaking up impossible. It punished whistleblowers and rewarded silence. Melissa advanced to the next slide. We're here today to change that culture. In your hospitals, in your departments, in every interaction with staff. Because the next Gloria Martinez is in one of your hospitals right now. And whether she lives or dies might depend on whether your nurses feel safe reporting concerns. After the presentation, one of the administrators, a woman in her 50s, who'd introduced herself as the chief nursing officer at a suburban hospital, approached Melissa. "That took courage," she said. "What you did, most people wouldn't have." "Most people shouldn't have to," Melissa replied. "That's what we're trying to fix. Can I ask you something? Personally?" The woman lowered her voice. "Do you ever regret it? Speaking up? You lost your job, your reputation for a while. Your daughter had to watch you go through hell. Was it worth it?" Melissa thought about Vanessa, who was thriving now, about the apartment they'd moved to, bigger, safer, in a better neighborhood, about the work she was doing, the lives they might be saving, about Gloria Martinez's daughter, who'd told her that her mother's death finally meant something. "Every single day. I'm glad I spoke up," Melissa said. "Not because everything turned out well, though I'm grateful it did, but because I can look at myself in the mirror. I can tell my daughter the truth when she asks me what I did when I saw something wrong. And I can sleep at night knowing I didn't choose convenience over someone's life. Even if it had cost you everything? Especially then, because some things are worth losing everything for. Truth is one of them. Justice is another. And the belief that patient lives matter more than institutional reputation, that's worth any price." The trial of Dr. Raymond Whitmore and Linda Vance made national headlines. Melissa testified for 3 days, walking the jury through what she'd seen in that file, the decision to come forward, the retaliation that followed. Carol Jefferson testified. Maria Martinez testified. 5 other nurses came forward with their own stories of being silenced. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Dr. Whitmore was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Linda Vance received 6 years. Several board members were charged with lesser offenses and accepted plea deals. Mercy General Hospital was sold to a nonprofit healthcare system that immediately implemented sweeping reforms. They invited Melissa to consult on the changes. She agreed, on the condition that Carol Jefferson be hired as the hospital's new patient safety officer. The state medical board revised its investigation protocols, making it harder for hospitals to stonewall inquiries. New legislation was introduced requiring transparent public reporting of all adverse events, and the Patient Safety Alliance grew, expanding to 6 cities, helping dozens of hospitals improve their systems while investigating dozens more for suspected cover-ups. 1 year after Melissa first walked into Tyler Hayes' office building, she stood in that same lobby with Vanessa beside her. They were meeting Tyler for lunch, a regular occurrence now. Tyler had become more than a boss. He'd become a friend, someone who understood what she'd risked, what she'd sacrificed, and why it mattered. "Mom," Vanessa said while they waited, "do you remember that night, when you were trying to decide whether to talk to Mr. Hayes?" "Of course I remember. You asked me if I thought you should do it, and I said you should, because it was the right thing." "I remember. I was scared, though. Really scared. I knew it might mean we'd lose everything. Our apartment, your job, all of it. And I told you to do it anyway, because it was right. But I was terrified." Melissa hugged her daughter. "Me too, baby. Me too. But we made it. We actually made it through." "We did. Together." Tyler emerged from the elevator, saw them waiting, and smiled. "Sorry I'm late. Conference call ran long. Ready for lunch?" They walked out into the spring sunshine, three people whose lives had intersected in the most unlikely way and had somehow managed to change the world a little bit in the process. Melissa thought about the long journey. From that moment in the records room when she'd first opened Dr. Whitmore's file to this moment now, walking through downtown with her daughter and her boss friend, heading to lunch like normal people living normal lives. Except their lives weren't normal, and they never would be again. But that was okay, because Melissa had learned something important over the past year. Normal was overrated. Normal was staying quiet when you saw something wrong. Normal was choosing security over integrity, convenience over truth. And Melissa Torres was done being normal. She was a whistleblower, a patient advocate, a mother who'd taught her daughter that courage meant doing the right thing even when it cost you everything. She was someone who'd looked at a choice between silence and speaking up, and had chosen to speak, even though silence would have been so much easier. And somewhere, in hospitals across the country, other nurses were watching her story. Other people were learning that speaking up was possible, that institutions could be challenged, that truth could win, even against powerful opponents who wanted it buried. Gloria Martinez's death hadn't been in vain. Thomas Brennan's death hadn't been in vain. All the patients whose lives had been treated as collateral damage in the hospital's quest to protect its reputation. Their deaths meant something. Now, they'd sparked a change that was still rippling outward. And Melissa Torres, the nurse who'd risked everything to tell the truth, had started it all. As they walked into the restaurant, Vanessa took her hand and squeezed it tight. "I'm proud of you." "Mom," she whispered, "I'm proud of you too, baby, for being brave with me. I learned from the best." And for the first time in a year, Melissa felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Not hope that everything would be easy, or that all the battles were won, but hope that doing the right thing mattered, that truth could triumph over lies, that one person with courage could change the world. She'd been that person, and somewhere out there, someone else would be that person tomorrow, or next week, or next year. The fight wasn't over. It would never be over. But today, in this moment, with her daughter beside her and justice finally served, Melissa Torres allowed herself to feel something rare and precious. Peace. She'd done it. Against all odds, against all opposition, despite every cost and sacrifice she'd done it. She'd told the truth, and the truth had set them all free. 3 years later, the Patient Safety Alliance had grown into a national organization with offices in 15 cities. Melissa Torres had become a sought-after speaker, testifying before Congress about healthcare transparency and training thousands of healthcare workers on patient advocacy. Vanessa was in high school now, considering following in her mother's footsteps into healthcare. "But I think I want to be a lawyer," she told Melissa one evening, "so I can fight for people like you did, but with the law on my side from the beginning." Tyler Hayes had sold his other businesses to focus entirely on the Patient Safety Alliance. "Turns out saving lives is more rewarding than making money," he'd told Melissa. Who knew? Carol Jefferson had been promoted to Vice President of Nursing at the reformed Mercy General Hospital. Under her leadership, the hospital had become a model for transparency and patient safety, winning national recognition for its incident reporting systems. And Jennifer Wallace had won a Pulitzer Prize for her investigative series on healthcare cover-ups, inspired by Melissa's case and expanded to document similar patterns in hospitals across the country. But the most important change was smaller, more personal. In hospitals around the country, nurses who saw something wrong remembered Melissa Torres's story. They remembered that speaking up was possible, that courage could be rewarded, that patients' lives mattered more than institutional reputation. And slowly, painfully, one whistleblower at a time, healthcare began to change. Not everywhere, Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to save lives. And that, Melissa knew, was what it had all been for. Not for recognition or reward, though those had come, but for the patient in some hospital somewhere who would survive because a nurse spoke up when they saw something wrong. For the family who wouldn't have to grieve because someone had the courage to halt a dangerous procedure. For the truth that would be told instead of buried. That was Melissa Torres's legacy, and it was worth everything she'd sacrificed. Every single thing. Thank you for following Melissa's journey. This story explored the courage it takes to stand up against institutional power, the cost of telling the truth, and the profound impact one person can have when they refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. Melissa Torres represents all the real whistleblowers who risk everything to protect others, unsung heroes whose courage changes the world, one truth at a time. If you enjoyed this story, please rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments. Thank you for reading.